are you?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond. James Bond. Oh, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British hand up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy.
As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Hello and welcome to James Bond Radio podcast number 33. Today we're talking about the comic book Bond, and we have an interview with Alan J. Porter, author of James Bond, The History of the Illustrated 007. Today I'm joined by my good mate and Bond aficionado, Tom Sears. Say hello, Tom.
Hello, mate. How's it going?
Hello, mate. All right.
All right, Gav?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad.
Good.
So, we're talking about comic book Bond. What do you think?
We are. It's exciting because for me, I was never really much of like a comic book kid when I was growing up. I remember I used to read like a Spider-Man comic when I was a wee lad, but it's not been a world that I'm that experienced with. And after kind of looking at the book, Alan sent us both a copy, bless his heart.
Lovely chat.
And after looking through, there is this entire unseen world of Bond, at least from my perspective. And I think that's common for a lot of people, is the comic book side of things isn't the most kind of the biggest focus in the world of Bond. It's usually the films and then the books, or the other way around if you're a bookie. And then that's sort of it, really, I guess. So it's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same for me, really. I think the only comic that I used to read back in the day when I was a youngster was Viz. And for anyone...
Viz was amazing.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know what Viz was, it was basically a bit of a rude comic for young boys to chuckle and look at funny pictures. So, that was basically my comic world.
I remember there was one strip in there called, I think was it Tommy's Amazing Testicles, and there was the guy that just had a massive ball bag, and it was the adventures he'd got
Was it
into.
Billy Big Balls or Tommy's Testicles? It was something like that.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
That's the level of highbrow entertainment this comic is. That's what we're talking about.
Carrying them around in a wheelbarrow, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
So anyway, like you, my comic, I was never sort of one for comics back in the day. And in my mind, when I thought of comic book Bond, I'd heard of sort of the whole newspaper strip, but in my head it was always, maybe like 10 newspapers had a couple of little things, and it was like 5 frames, and that's all it was. So in my mind, there was never enough there to warrant looking at. It'd probably be a copy of the film and probably not a good version of it. Yeah. So I've always thought, okay, that's nothing. But lo and behold, I was completely wrong. Obviously we'll find out with the interview later, but there is just a huge world of untapped sort of material, not just novelizations or comic book adaptations of the films themselves, but new stories in the English language, as well as numerous foreign language comics, which unfortunately some of haven't been translated. So it's kind of exciting, because I know we say if someone hasn't seen the films until they were quite old, we're like, oh, you're so lucky. And the same with the books. If you haven't read the books, you're starting them for the first time, you're so lucky. And I know perhaps for our point of view, the comic isn't quite up there with the others, but at least this is an area of Bond that it is new and fresh to us. So it is kind of like, oh, okay, let's have a look. And it's something that I'll definitely sort of look into over the coming months, I think.
Absolutely. The legions of Bond comic book purists are screaming into their earphones now after that. But no, absolutely.
Apologies, Alan.
Yeah, sorry, mate. But yeah, so it's going to be an illuminating episode for that. Absolutely. So as usual, before we get cracking, make sure you come and join us on Facebook. Just put James Bond Radio into the search. Come and follow us on Twitter, which is @JamesBondRadio. And make sure you come along to the website as well, jamesbondradio.com. We've got a thriving blog going on over there now with all the up-to-date news, thanks to JBR News Queen Linda Zhu, who keeps us all updated on the latest goings-on. And obviously make sure you leave comments and all that kind of stuff under the post, because there's some good conversations happening there. Also, leave us a voicemail if you want to get involved with a guess the quote or trivia or random question or whatever. You can leave us a voicemail through the website. And last but not least, come to our iTunes page. If you just put James Bond Radio into the iTunes search, if you wouldn't mind coming and leaving us a nice glowing 5-star review, that would be really, really nice, because that really helps us rank high in iTunes and attract more listeners. So there's my little bit done there, Chris. We can move on.
We can, well, almost, because I just want to reiterate that it does help us a lot. We really appreciate it. One of the things which I sometimes surprises me is, we've got a lot of listeners now. We've got a huge amount of Bond fans out there. The quotes is one of my favourite sections of James Bond Radio. I love them. I love it when you do it, when I do it. I love it when the JBR listeners send one in. And I'd like to think that we could get enough to have at least one every podcast. And I know some people are probably thinking, oh, I'm not going to send one in because everyone else does that. And that I'm sure they've got loads. But it's not always the case, Sometimes, we won't have some. And it's nice to have a few so we know that for the next few podcasts we've got some. So please, anyone out there, send in your quotes, because I know you're going to be good at them. We know you're going to fire them off.
Even if they're rubbish, still do them anyway, because that makes it even funnier. Yeah,
exactly. And probably harder to guess as well. Yeah. So by all means, please leave us a message and a quote as well if you want.
Lovely stuff. So in other news, we succeeded in funding the JBR T-shirt campaign, didn't we? It's all good.
We did, yeah. It's all good.
So those T-shirts will be on their way to everyone that ordered one, which is really nice. And sadly now the campaign's over. You won't be able to get a T-shirt for a while now. So they're going to be off the market. So they're going to be super rare collector's items worth about £1 million each within about a year. Daniel's going to be wearing one to the Spectre premiere, I'm sure.
He's going to be rocking one completely, yeah. It'll be under his dinner jacket, so you might not see it, but he'll be wearing one.
Yeah, he'll definitely be wearing one under that shirt.
We may do something similar in the future. Who knows? We may do something similar, but if you ever manage to get your hands on one, what we definitely want to see is photos of people wearing the JBR T-shirts, whether you're, with all your Bond memorabilia, all your Bond toys, whether you're in a Bond location, that would be amazing if you're wearing it, or if you're just having a nice romantic evening with the missus and happen to be wearing it, or the mister,
Absolutely,
whatever you want to do.
Absolutely. If you're just literally having a cup of tea and you happen to have your James Bond Radio T-shirt on, send us a photo of that as well. So that'll be nice. But yeah, we've sold T-shirts all across the world. We've sold them in the States, in the UK, Canada, Australia, Poland, all across random kind of countries and places far and wide. So it's going to be good to see people wearing them all across the world. It'll be nice.
Definitely. Well, speaking of places far and wide, it wasn't that long ago
that was a great little cutaway there, Chris. You did really well. I'm glad you linked it in nicely.
Yeah. Oh well, there we go. But obviously you were in Thailand only a couple of months ago, which I'm still super duper jealous about, but I'll get back there one day. But I know I posted a photo on Facebook now of a couple of nice little gifts that you sent in, but we haven't had a chance to sort of show some of the listeners or some of the YouTube watchers. So I'm just going to show a couple of things that Tom kindly brought back for me. The first is a lovely wooden elephant, and it's got a price tag on it which says 20,000 baht. 20,000 baht. Bloody tourist. So I believe this cost you a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Some random homeless boy climbed in my boat and offered it to me, so I thought it would be rude not to.
Yeah, too right. So yeah, I'm super chuffed with that. That's amazing. That goes on one end of a mantelpiece type thing. And then next to it, now this is freaking amazing as well. So we've got a nice little note there, and it says, taken from the exact spot where Bond's seaplane landed on Scaramanga Island. Now, I'll try and show you close if you can see. I'll even do a little noise. There we go. Basically, there are loads of shells from Scaramanga Island here. Now, what surprised me initially was the lack of sand. That looks like quite a shelly beach. On the film, you see it and you think, oh, it's pristine golden sands. But no. There are quite a lot of sizable shells.
Absolutely.
And there we go.
I must have looked a little bit mad in the sense that I had a bottle, like an empty water bottle. So I went over to the spot where the seaplane would have landed and just started. And I thought it did look like sand even when I arrived. And then when I actually got down and was scraping it up, it's all just thousands and thousands of tiny little shells. Are you looking for shells? So I just stuffed them all in the bottle and brought them home with me. But yeah, it's not a sandy beach; it's a shelly beach, which is quite interesting. But yeah,
for your feet.
A couple of little keepsakes. I got some extra for me. I've got a little bottle with my Scaramanga Island shells in as well. So that's a nice little keepsake. I'm glad it made it all the way to England.
Oh, thank you very much. So we had quite an interesting news on Twitter recently, didn't we? What was that about? Well,
we did have a rather special moment. Some of our JBR listeners, God bless them, thought they'd send some tweets to Sir Roger Moore of all people, saying, "Roger, we'd love to see you on James Bond Radio, and come and give us come and get involved and have an interview with the guys." And a good few people tweeted him, and he actually responded to one of them. JBR listener at Paulie P. Cake tweeted, "I'd love to hear you on my favourite podcast, James Bond Radio. They're having a year of Sir Roger, you know." To which Sir Roger responded, "Then they have very good taste. Maybe later in the year when I'll have my book out." At which point, I had a little heart palpitation, and not unlike what happened when they announced the Spectre name. I had some bowel movement issues going on, and there it is. So Sir Roger himself, what makes it even better is he now follows us on Twitter as well. How amazing is that? That's
beautiful. That's a lovely coupling right there. And I must say, you must go through quite a lot of underwear.
Dude, it's getting outrageous.
It's getting, or your laundry bill is massive, either one way or the other.
Absolutely.
Now, it may have been the case. One of our JBL listeners did point out that it may have been the case that Mr. Moore himself might have been elsewhere, and it could have been his publicist, and that may have been the case. But either which way, there's at least, even if it is a publicist, he's heard about JBR and they're following us. So who knows? I mean, it's a slim chance, but any little chance is better than none at all.
And I'm choosing to believe that it was actually Sir Roger. So okay. I don't care.
Yeah.
Enough
Those
said.
Pants went through a lot, so it's going to be...
I didn't shit myself for nothing, Chris. God damn it. So by the sounds of things, Sir Roger is working on a new book, which will be out later in the year. He brings
one out every year, doesn't he?
He's very prolific these days, isn't he?
He is, completely. He's like... Well, he's just super duper. He's a bit like Steve Cole, who brings out like 5 million books
there you
every
go.
year.
Yeah.
So he does well.
Completely. So hopefully, fingers crossed, if all the planets align, we may be able to bag an interview with Sir Roger himself, which will be the ultimate moment, I think. Really, for us, that would be pretty good. So you never know. Roger might even be listening now. He's discovered us on Twitter. He might be a regular listener. You never know.
Yeah. If he is, give us a call, Roger. We'll sort it out. Cheers, mate.
Absolutely. Right. So what have we had in the world of Bond news this week then?
Well, I'm going to start off with, unfortunately, some sad news. Now, last year, the end of last year, we had 3 bits of sad news. Pretty soon, sort of one after the other. There was obviously Richard Keel, Godfrey John, Geoffrey Holder all passed away last year. 3 great villains, obviously probably the most iconic henchmen of the time, one of the scariest and most intriguing and memorable, and obviously Oromov was amazing in GoldenEye as well. So 3 sort of villains, and as everyone has heard, Louis Jourdan from Octopussy, Mr. Kamal Khan, unfortunately passed away. Now he was 93, so it is a frightfully good age, I think.
Yeah, that's a good innings.
It is a good innings, but every bit of news like this is sad to hear. You just want everyone to continue, don't you? Really?
Yeah.
But it does. I like the fact that quite a few people went to watch Octopussy, and it does get you thinking about their actors. And Kamal Khan is, when you talk about Bond villains, he's not one that comes to the forefront of many people. Sort of, it's not the first one that you say, or possibly even the second or third, but. One of the things that I like about Octopussy a lot is his chemistry with Roger Moore, like Kamal Khan and James Bond. They do in fact, this was alluded to by one or two of the listeners, they do almost try to out-suave each other. Like when they're sitting down to dinner, they're both dressed in their dinner jackets. They've both got this sort of really sort of sophisticated class to them, and it's almost trying to one-upmanship on each other. And I really like that. It's a joy to watch. But he's also got some really nice moments in the film as well. So,
I love the way he says octopussy. I love the way he says that. And I love the way he says Mr. Bond as well.
Yeah, he does say Mr. Bond.
His delivery is great. I love it.
Yeah.
But really sad news. I guess we're getting to that point now where it's a lot of these movies are getting on in age now, and this is going to just start happening more and more often. Crazy is that it was 50 years ago this week they started shooting Thunderball. So 50 years ago is a long, long time. I remember being at school, and 50 years ago was World War II. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And we're moving on to 50 years of Bond now. So it's like it's awful, but it's going to happen. It's awful.
Yeah, of course. No, well, he did well. Put it that way.
He did well. Good. God bless you, Louis. We salute you.
Indeed. Okay, so there's on to other news. Just sort of briefly, both yourself and I watched Kingsman within the last week. And now none of us, I think you might, I wrote a little blurb to you about what I thought, but I haven't heard what you thought upon watching it as well. So I think we should have a little chat about that and see what we think. So what were your thoughts?
Well, I went to see it last night, and I thought... I didn't really know a great deal about it because I know Kingsman is a graphic novel. I don't know whether it's a series of graphic novels or just like a one-off story. I don't know. But from seeing the trailer, it was very Bond heavy in the references and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, it's a spy thriller. I've got to go and watch it. And it's kind of, I don't know, for me, it was more Austin Powers than James Bond. It was like a balls to the wall, over the top kind of spy movie. And it is a comic book. So I guess it is going to be more sort of, superhero-y spies than down to earth. But the interesting thing I thought, as we'll probably talk about in a second, is there's obviously a load of Bond references throughout. And what we have here is director Matthew Vaughn, who obviously directed Layer Cake, which is what got Daniel on the radar for Bond. He obviously directed X-Men First Class, and he's clearly a big-time Bond fan, and he's gagging to direct a Bond film. So again, this is another audition for him to get him on the radar, I imagine. There was a line in there that said... do you remember the scene where they're actually talking about Bond films?
Yes, yeah. It was very, very almost in your face, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they're actually talking about Bond films, and there was a line he says where he said, they're a bit too serious these days. They need to lighten up, or something along those lines. Yeah,
it is exactly that. He referred back to the classic early films of the 60s, which obviously he enjoyed, but there was that little sort of sly dig slightly at the present Bonds being too serious. Obviously, complete contrast to what Kingsman is. Now, that's an interesting way to take it because Matthew Vaughn thought at one point he actually had the Casino Royale gig. He was informed by the head of MGM that he had the job to direct Casino Royale.
So this is news to me. I hadn't heard this. So he was offered the job to direct Casino Royale
by the head of MGM, but not by Eon. So for 24 hours, he thought he was going to do Casino Royale until subsequently he was informed, I assume by someone at Eon, that actually Martin Campbell was going to do it. So clearly he was on a bit of a downer after that. And now obviously Sam Mendes is on the gig. And I'm sure he'd still love to do one. Well, of course he'd love to do one. But it's almost... the little digs like that and the little sort of mentions in this film are almost sort of like he's resigned to the fact that he might never get to do one. And this is his slight way of sort of saying, maybe I would have given it this if I had had the chance to do it. So I don't know if it's almost a dangerous game to play that, if he still wants to direct it, or if he's now thinking, right, who cares? I'm never going to do one. I'm just going to do my thing now. I don't know. But it's interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting. I before I saw this, I was sort of the opinion that I was like Matthew Vaughn and Christopher Nolan are two directors I'd really love to see make a Bond film. But based on Layer Cake and based on X-Men First Class, I definitely stand by that. But watching this and having that line in there, I'm not sure if he'd want to take it to the super fantastic levels rather than make a gritty spy thriller. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a funny one. I'm sort of in two minds after seeing that film.
Yeah. Well, the thing about that film is it's very much, like you said, it's kind of Austin Powers meets Bond meets Kick-Ass. And the Kick-Ass element is the heavy amounts of violence, fighting, very gory, but so, played over sort of light-hearted music or stuff to make it, have the comic book sort of side to it. And obviously that wouldn't work with Bond. I mean, you can go into some sort of area like that, but you don't want to see another Kick-Ass but Bond Kick-Ass, do you? You need something else. Now, I think if he did get the chance to do it, I don't think he would completely do it that way, because obviously he's a fan of Bond and he knows what it'd need. But there is, after seeing that, I think maybe he's sort of thinking to himself, well, I'm never going to get the gig, and so I'm just
maybe
going to do
so.
my thing.
Yeah,
I think so. But the film itself, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a bit of a hoot. It is kind of like a bit of a 60s, 70s Bond. It was a bit all out there. I love the henchwoman with the blades, the amputee with the blades. She was brilliant. Samuel L. Jackson doing his lisp as the main villain. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? It's not. It's more sort of.
It's just a joyful, fun sort of popcorn flick, isn't it? It's that's totally what it is. I don't know whether they're going to make any more. It's kind of.
I think they will. I think they will.
I feel like because I won't say any spoilers actually, but like when you consider. Yeah, in fact, I won't say anything because I'm going to spoil it for everybody who hasn't seen it, so I won't say anything. But I think there's definite room for a series there.
I've got a feeling they definitely will. This will be his sort of Bond canon almost.
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. I think deep down, I feel like maybe Eon are holding out for Christopher Nolan to do the first of the next actor, and then take it from there. That's what I reckon they're kind of shooting for. But we'll see. Absolutely. So Kingsman, definitely go and see it. It's definitely worth a shot. I mean, really, 2015 is the year of the spy, because we've got this movie, we've got a movie with Jude Law called Uncle. Spy, we've got The Man from Uncle, we've got Spectre, and we've got Kingsman. So that's like 5 spy movies all this year, which is great.
And they all look good as well. It's not like a dud amongst them. And one thing though, for us, it'll be another addition to that, which is November Man. We have to find a way. Well, you could probably see it over in the US, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
You must be able to see it over there.
I've been keeping an eye out for it to show up on Netflix, and it hasn't yet, but it must be out soon. Yeah,
you can get it on eBay on Region 1, but not on Region 2 over here. It just seems weird. I don't know why.
Weird, isn't it? Yeah.
Why did it not show? Why can't you get it on Region 2 DVD? I don't know why, but there we go. Hopefully, we'll get to see it at some point this year. Anyway.
Absolutely.
It'll be good to see Pierce doing his stuff.
Pierce back in action. So, moving on, it's time for some speculation. So, as per usual, what we'll do is we'll edit in the time reference to skip to, if you want to skip all the potential spoilerisms and all that kind of stuff. So, if you want to skip that, then please skip to
35 minutes and 15 seconds.
Okay. You're still with us. You're in the naughty door again. You're ready for it. You're ready for the naughtiness and the naughty things you shouldn't know. So starting off before you reel off your Spectre news stuff, I recorded a little bonus episode last week, because obviously we had the new sort of behind the scenes featurette that they released, which you didn't want to see at all, did you? You want to go in with sort of virgin eyes when you watch the movie. So you haven't seen that yet. So I thought, well, I'll do a quick little sort of 10-minute rundown of exactly what that is. So if you haven't listened to that yet, the previous episode to this one will be that. I think it's like 8 minutes. Is just me talking to myself about my thoughts about the Spectre featurette. So we won't be discussing that in this particular episode, but obviously you can just listen to that if you want to. So moving on, Chris, what have you got for me? What's been happening this week in the world of Spectre?
Okay, so in terms of sort of, not really speculation, but in terms of just general keeping up to date with how things are going. So if we look at the filming side of things, so do you remember it was a few weeks ago, there were some photo shoots released of Bond, Daniel Craig, Léa Seydoux, Dave Bautista on top of this glacier in Austria, all big puffer jackets and stuff like that. That was in a place called Solden, and they were on a glacier there. So the second unit has returned to that same glacier to shoot some of the action scenes there. So none of the principal cast, they've all done theirs, they've gone. They've pretty much all been completed. But we know that the second unit will be shooting scenes on the glacier itself and specifically in the road and tunnel leading up to the glacier. Now that straight away reminds me a bit of Quantum of Solace with the car chase and the tunnels and the roads. A bit like potentially GoldenEye, the chase. I'm not sure. Who knows what it could be part of the chase, or it could just be, whoever, whatever. We don't know. But obviously the glacier we think is going to be part of the big sort of action scene, whether that's pre-titles or later in the film, we don't know yet. But anyway, so that's what that is. So while that's been going on, the first unit were recently filming at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire. Now, I think we put a little post on the Facebook, but a lot of people have probably seen the pictures now. But it's an extremely sort of lavish, opulent sort of English estate, sort of manor house. It looks amazing. But now, from what we've seen, there were all these expensive cars sort of just parking up. And it was great because we now know that this was in the film. It's set in Rome. Now this is the meeting headquarters of the villains. So it could be Quantum, it could be Spectre.
Oh, I didn't know that. All right,
yeah.
nice.
So all these like amazingly expensive sports cars basically are going to be number 2, number 3, if they call numbers or whatever.
Yeah.
So imagine seeing, for instance, Lucia Sciarra stepping out of one, or potentially Denby, or even potentially Oberhauser, who knows, or maybe it's not. But the thing I loved about Quantum was the opera scene, when you just see all these Quantum agents and you think that's nice, and it's got a bit of class because you're at the opera. They're all dressed up, and I like seeing these baddie agents. Thunderbolt, I love it as well. And this seems like, as soon as you hear that, and then you see the pictures, you think, oh, you can just imagine the shot of all these cars pulling up, these people dressed up, and then that means that we've got potentially a meeting, potentially a Quantum or a Spectre meeting. Now straight away I'm thinking Thunderbolt boardroom, or stuff like that, and that would get me really excited. What do you think?
That is exciting stuff, man. That is good. I didn't realize. I've seen those pictures. I didn't realize that's what it was. That's what it was playing in the movie. So interesting, man. Exciting times.
It is indeed. So after that, basically, they're all sort of pre-planning to shoot in Mexico. We now know that's going to start at late March, so still a little while to go yet. Eon were looking for 7,000 extras, having been narrowed down from a possible 200,000. So, that's quite a lot there. Now, what we know about Mexico is, for Moonraker, they shot the Rio Carnival, which I think might have been out of season. I'm not sure. Definitely for Thunderball, they shot the Junkanoo out of season purely for the film. Now, with the Mexico scene, they're going to, with the Mexico shoot, they're going to include a scene with the Dia de los Muertos, which is their festival for the Day of the Dead. Now, this is something where they all get dressed up in fancy clothes. They've all got face paint on, colours everywhere, but it's all like skulls and bones and everything like this. Now, straight away, that tells me, that shouts Live and Let Die. We know Mendes is a big Live and Let Die fan. So I think we're going to see lots of these almost like Baron Samedi-esque people here, there and everywhere, which I think would be really cool. As for how it's used, again, at the start of Quantum, they had that horse palio scene or whatever it was, Palo, the horse race sort of thing, where you saw glimpses of it in between the action. Perhaps there'll be a chase like there was in Thunderbolt. We don't quite know, but we do know that that's going to be part of the Mexico sort of scene. So
interesting, very nice.
Yeah, so that's the filming done. Now on to motoring. Now, Jaguar Land Rover confirmed that there was. We mentioned before that Mr. Hinks will be having his own car, or we believe it's Mr. Hinks, because he was obviously asked would they need someone who could drive, and we think that's going to be the Jaguar CX-75, which is a beast, and it's a great car. But they're also supplied Range Rover Sport SVRs, which are the fastest, most powerful Land Rover, and these Land Rover Defender Bigfoots, which are basically got these massive wheels. So and they were both used in the Austria scene. So I imagine we're going to see some big 4x4 action on the snow, going off piste or on perhaps even on the glacier. Who knows? But I think that would be quite good, and I think there's going to be a lot of sort of chase action around that sort of thing.
Interesting.
So now the next bit of motoring is something which this is more speculation now. Now, I'm just going to read a little. I've got my MI6 Confidential magazine here. Now, there's a couple of things about the Aston Martin DB10 which I didn't realise at first. Now, production will be strictly limited to 10 of the bespoke cars. So, DB10, only 10 cars. So I thought this thing would go on market, everyone would be able to get one. Now, whether it's 10 cars purely for the film, or whether they're making cars for the film and only 10 cars will then be sold afterwards, I don't know. I'm assuming it's just for the film. But that was something which I was a little bit sort of, surprised me a bit. But the thing that caught me now, there is something that Sam Mendes said. If I can find it, just bear with me a second. Well, he basically said that the car does some things which might not be expected. So the things that we would expect a Bond car to do, missiles behind the headlights, tyre slashers or laser slashers, ejector seats, tracking beacons, something like this. But I studied the picture, right? I don't know if this is going to happen, but I was looking at the picture of the DB10 and something caught my eye, and it was the alloys on this car. Okay. Now, if you look at the alloys, they've got, 10 sort of white spokes. Now, the way that they're designed makes them look like they're curving. So even though they're straight, the way that they're painted gives them almost a slight curve. Okay. Now, straight away, I had a thought that if that was rotating and you've got these white curves that are rotating with black sort of, where they're alloys, where there's space in between them, you get black. Yeah. That gave me an image of perhaps the gun barrel from the opening scene of the Bond films.
Have you got a picture in this magazine that we can have a look at?
I have indeed. Now, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that?
I can, yeah.
Now, obviously, I won't be able to make it rotate.
Oh, come on, Chris.
Yeah, I know what's going on. No, this is purely, I don't know, it's purely speculation. I don't know if it's going to work, if it's going to happen. But just imagine seeing a car chase with the DB5 and the alloys are moving around and it creates a gun barrel as it goes along. I mean, it would be quite subtle because obviously it won't say, oh, look what this car can do. But as a Bond fan, if you saw that, you'd be, fuck me, that's brilliant.
Now, a nice little nod.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen. It probably won't now I've said it. But if it does, I'll be well chuffed. And we'll have to see.
Very nice.
I'll be super excited. So.
So I had a thought that obviously, we're seeing Mr. White coming back and it's obviously going to tie in the Quantum organization into Spectre. So Casino and Quantum are going to be kind of linked, obviously, with Spectre, which got me to thinking, do you think Vesper might get a mention in the new film?
That is a very interesting point because prior to you mentioning that hadn't crossed my mind at all. And it really should have done because obviously she was heavily in Casino and obviously she was mentioned in Quantum. Wasn't mentioned or alluded to at all in Skyfall, I don't think.
No.
So that is an interesting point. I mean, if she was, I'm sure it would be similar to how it was done in Quantum, i.e. very hardly at all. But it's almost like if they did go back to it, I don't know. It seemed, for me personally, if they don't do it, I wouldn't be disappointed whatsoever because it's almost done and dusted. Even though Quantum's still going, Mr. White is still going. The Vesper thing, I don't know. I mean, if they brought it back, I don't know if it would work. What do you think?
See, I don't know. If they do, I think my prediction would be that it would be a very fleeting reference. Like you might see a photo of her somewhere or she might be name checked once or something. I feel like if she does get a mention, it's going to be very brief. I wouldn't imagine it would be a major plot point at all. No. It would just be a fleeting glimpse. But an interesting thought nonetheless, because I feel like that was an integral part of those films, and this is the organisation behind what made her end up betraying him and all that kind of stuff. So maybe it is worth a mention.
Now you mention that, straight away I can picture a scene with M and Bond and M mentioning it, but off the cuff, like as in not as in, or it's just completely, he's not put any thought into it. He's mentioned it as part of the thing, and you just get a reaction from Bond, which is slightly, you just know that even though M's still talking, he heard that name and it's still got an effect on him, something like that maybe. And I think if they did that, that would definitely work. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Another thing to wait and see. Okay, so we've got a couple more bits of news. As with all previous Bonds since GoldenEye, 007 is going to be sporting an Omega watch. Rolex Omega. So now it's going to be a Seamaster Aquaterra model. Now the interesting thing about this one is part of the design on the watch face and on the second hand alludes to James Bond's family coat of arms. Ooh. So that's quite interesting. It's a little nod, I guess. A bit of Majesty's in there and something like that. Limited to 15,007 007 watches, and yours for only £4,630.
Bargain. I'm going to nip out and get one.
Excellent. I'll get two. Right. Okay. And final bit of news we have. I think we mentioned it in the last podcast. James Bond, like the death of Ian Fleming, it had been 50 years. Now, in some of the countries around the world, which included Canada, Japan, New Zealand, and a few others as well, the copyright on Bond had run out because the law was 50 years after the author had died, it's then open to the public domain. Now, there were stories springing up straight away in Canada of people writing their own James Bond books, trying to get it out there and stuff like that, which would have been quite interesting. But apparently now they've joined under pressure to extend that to 70 years, which is what the UK have, it's what the US have. So anyone that suddenly had a great idea to write a Bond novel is now going to have to wait another 20 odd years. But it did get me thinking. So imagine in the UK, if we had free reign to write a Bond movie. Obviously, if 50 million people wrote a Bond movie, not all of them are going to get made or at least be successful. But if you had the chance to write one, would you give it a go?
It's a funny one, isn't it? So in 20 years' time, around the world, the Bond copyright will be up. Is that just for the literary side of things, or?
Yeah, that's just for the literary side of things. But even when it is up, there will be heavy intellectual property behind. Think of the power of the Fleming estate. There'll be some way of extending it with the money and the power they've got. Yeah. There will be some way of extending it. I'm sure there is.
It's interesting because I think Sherlock Holmes is in the public domain now, isn't
he?
It
is. Yeah, so, anyone can do anything about Sherlock Holmes. You're right. Yeah.
So it's kind of, I don't think it will make the difference. You will probably just have about 5,000 really crappy Bond books, which would probably be the result if I tried to write one. And then alongside all the official ones anyway. But yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? It's an interesting thought.
There we go. So that's all the news and speculations.
Good stuff. Now you never guess who we've heard from this week, Chris.
Go for it.
We've only heard from Jack Lugo again.
What?
We haven't heard from him for a while, but he's got back in touch and he sent us a little voicemail. So let's have a little listen to what Jack has to say for himself.
Hi guys, this is Jack Lugo. I just wanted to see if we can start a discussion over at James Bond Radio. Perhaps the guys have an opinion on this and the listeners might be able to talk about this a little bit. I just finished reading on Her Majesty's Secret Service yesterday, and I wrote a blog post about it, and one of the things that struck me, even though I was expecting it, was the ending where Tracy's killed, and Bond, says those words, we have all the time in the world. And I guess even though I've seen the film, it didn't strike me as much as it did reading the novel. So I just wanted to see what people think is going on. Why did Fleming chose that phrase for Bond to say? What was, perhaps the thought process behind Bond saying that? I think it's, for me, I think it's Bond trying to cling on to, the future he thought he was going to have with Tracy, and he knows that the second, people burst into that car and take Tracy out and take him out of that vehicle, then that dream is over. So I think that's his heartbreak of not being able to fulfill the dream of living a life with Tracy. Anyway, I just wanted to chime in with that, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Okay, so what do you think about that then, Chris?
I think you made a good point, really. I mean, To me, I completely agree with him. I think that Fleming came up with the line because this was Bond's one chance to get out of the game, to settle down, to have a normal life, to have a life of his own outside of MI6 and being a secret agent. And, there's only one woman that could have done that, which is obviously Tracy. He thought that was going to be his life. Obviously, it was cut short. It didn't happen. No matter who you are, you could be Superman or James Bond. You're going to be in shock, aren't you? And I think it was purely that was his way of just being in shock, just not being able to compute. He had his heart set on something. It's going to happen. Suddenly, it's not there. He's only human, and I think that was his way of sort of saying, almost not being able to get over it just because he was in shock. What do you think?
Absolutely. No, I'm in total agreement. I think, what a striking phrase to come out with.
Yeah.
Like, it's a great one. Like, even forgetting the song they wrote based around it, but like, just what a way to end that book, man. I think. Do you know what? What tends to happen with me when I read the Flemings? When I feel the pull to read the Flemings again, I always start back at Casino and then I start to read through, and I'm going to read all of them through in sequence. Yeah. And then I usually get about halfway, and then something happens that I get distracted and end up not. And then so much time passes that I'm like, I should read Flemings, and then I start back at the beginning. So I haven't read like the last half of the Fleming books, like from say Doctor No onwards, in quite some time. So I'm really looking forward to kind of delving back into those. Now we're doing the podcast as well. It's a perfect excuse to do it.
Definitely.
And I haven't read that book in probably 15 years, so it's high time that I had a read of that one again. That's a good one. I remember. I think that might be nudging for equal first position for me in the Fleming books. That one.
Well, that one I haven't read for so long.
Yeah.
So and that's one that I know that I love. I love the film. I love the idea. I know it's close to the film. You've got the whole skiing scene. I'm really looking forward to it. But again, It's going to be some time until we do it. But it'll be great when we go into it.
Well, nice to hear from you again, Jack. It's been a little while. And good to hear you've been reading some quality Fleming. Now, next up, we got an email from JBR listener Darren and Noble. And he says this: Hi, Tom and Chris. Happy belated first birthday to James Bond Radio. Thank you very much, Darren.
Thank you.
I felt compelled to write to both of you to congratulate you on your sterling work that you've done so far. Well, thank you very much. I was introduced to JBR back on the 4th of December 2014 when I happened upon Tom's video of his reaction to the Spectre reveal. Now, if that was your first exposure to James Bond Radio, I'm not quite sure how I feel.
and yet you want to listen to more?
I don't quite know how that works out, but hey, but it's welcome. He says, my own reaction included a few tears. Not very Bond-like behaviour, I'm afraid to say. I can totally understand that, man. If I wasn't so busy, going apeshit, I would have probably had a little cry myself.
No, was he alluding to crying when he heard the title or crying when he heard your reaction?
I don't know. Could have been either. Yeah. But he says, from my first podcast, number 28, Spectre Revealed, I was hooked and listened to all the others as quickly as I could, and I bloody loved them. I thought I knew a lot about Bond, but I can honestly say that I've learned a great deal from the podcasts. Most of all, they're great fun, informative, and you both share an easy rapport that makes the listener feel like you're having a chat with your mates down the pub. But the good thing is, if you think something's a bit shit, you'll say it. I'm 100% with you on Die Another Day, by the way. Although I do have a soft spot for Rosamund Pike, as do we.
As I do, yeah, definitely.
I'm really looking forward to the future Bond Girls episode, although I fear you may wish to declare an 18 certificate for that one. Please don't hold back, though. I want more observations like those about Chew Me, please, Tom. So, I don't know. I think maybe we do need to do like the Nipples of Bond episode where we go through all of the nudity and sort of freeze frame those frames so everybody can have that. What do you think?
And provide the exact time so we know that it's on 1 hour, 12 minutes, 37 seconds, 0.25. You're going to get a bit of side boob or something. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. To Chris, although your Barbara Broccoli dreams and letter to Eon Productions had me in stitches, nothing made me howl with laughter more than your Lieutenant Hip impressions. Priceless. Absolutely great.
That's very kind of you. Thank you.
And he signs off with, bye for now, Darren. P.S. I have to get this off my chest. My vote for a future Bond is Jack O'Connell, winner of the Rising Star Award at the BAFTAs last week. Watch out, as this kid is the real deal, and in 10 years' time, he'll be 34 and perfect for the role. You heard it here first. What do you think about that?
That is a fantastic shout. Now, Jack O'Connell, I've been quite a fan of for a while. I remember watching him in Eden Lake quite a long time ago where he played this sort of crazy teen, sort of bit of a teen horror where they terrorise a couple, and he was great in that. I saw 71 recently, which was set in Northern Ireland when he was part of the army, Protestant army, and he gets lost from his unit, and he's amazing in that. He's just done a film with Angelina Jolie.
He's the guy in Unbroken.
Yeah.
Is that him?
Yeah,
Right,
Unbroken.
okay.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Unbroken, but I wanted to, and for some reason I didn't get around to it. But it looked good, and I'm definitely going to watch it. But he's a powerful actor. He's a really good, talented actor, and I think it's a great shout. It'll be interesting to see how he looks in maybe 10 years' time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he can bulk out as well. But yeah, I think that's a great choice. Yeah, brilliant choice.
Isn't it crazy? We've said it before. Probably right now, there's some 6-year-old kid, right, who hasn't even started acting yet, but one day he's going to get that role of James Bond, and in 30 years' time or whatever it is. Isn't that a funny thought?
Yeah. I'm not 6 though, Tom. It's not.
That's true.
I'm not 6 anymore.
Next up, we had a Facebook message from Bernard Custodio, who pointed out some. It is a good name. And he pointed out some interesting similarities between Dr. No and Live and Let Die, which had never crossed my mind before. So, what are your thoughts about that, Chris?
Now, this is one. Basically, I've always thought, Dr. No, Live and Let Die is set in Jamaica. Both first films for each of them. I always knew there was quite a bit in common. I just didn't know exactly how much. So I'm just going to... Do you want to list a few, or shall I list a few?
You can reel them off. Go for it.
Okay, I'll go for it. So these are the ones that Bernard mentioned. So here, basically, Dr. No, Strangways is shot and put in a hearse. In Live and Let Die, Hamilton is knifed and picked up in a casket in a funeral procession, as is Strutter as well, although we don't see that as much. Strangway's secretary dies after using headphones. The UK representative dies while using headphones in Live and Let Die. Bond is sent to investigate after 2 people die in Dr. No. Roger Moore is sent to investigate after 3 people die in Live and Let Die. We see Bond's apartment in both films. Both films have Jamaica as a setting, although in Live and Let Die it's given the fictional name of San Monique. Bond's driver dies by biting cyanide cigarette in Dr. No. Roger's driver dies when a passing car shoots him with a side view mirror dart. They try to kill Bond in Dr. No with a spider. They try and kill Roger in Live and Let Die with a snake. The 3 blind mice assassins try to kill Bond in Dr. No. The 3 main henchmen in Live and Let Die, Whisper, Baron Samedi and Teehee, try to kill Bond. Now, this is quite a good one. Sure, Bond plays solitaire as he waits for Professor Dent in Dr. No. Roger plays solitaire when he tricks her with the cards to sleep with him. And on a related note, Bond beats Sylvia Trench at cards in Dr. No and then has sex with her. Bond in Live and Let Die tricks Solitaire with the cards and then has sex with her. Quarrel Sr. helps Bond in Dr. No, and Quarrel Jr. helps Bond in Live and Let Die. Byron Lee and the Dragonaires sing Jump Up in Pussfellas Club. BJ Arnold sings Live and Let Die in Kananga's Club. Bond drives under construction crane to avoid a hearse coming after him in Dr. No, and Bond drives under a bridge as the police chase after him in Live and Let Die. Dr. No has metal hands and crushes a small statue at dinner. Teehee has the metal arm with the pincer and crushes Bond's gun. Bond leaves Dr. No to die in the water of the reactor, and Bond makes Kananga swallow the shark pellet as they fight in the water. Now, that is a lot of similarities. There were a couple, which I'm just going to add to that, which I just thought off the top of my head, which were that Dr. No and Dr. Kananga, 2 doctors as well, they both live on an island with an underground lair, and Bond travels by boat to reach them. After Bond arrives by an airplane in both films, he is driven by dodgy taxi drivers who work for the main villain. There are a couple more. Felix Leiter assists both Bond and Quarrel in both films as well. In Dr. No, Dr. No himself is not revealed until late in the film, and Mr. Big's true identity is not revealed until late in the film, with the reveal of Dr. Kananga. So there's a couple more which I thought of just off the top of my head as well. That is a lot, isn't it?
That is a lot of similarities, and I guess it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like you're introducing the new Bond, and like we discussed when we reviewed it, it was, what can we do to set Roger apart from Sean, and have him smoking cigars. He never orders a vodka martini, all those kinds of things. Yeah. But yeah, it's. I guess it's one of those things. It's a balance, isn't it, between introducing the new yet still making it familiar. And maybe they did that. I don't know whether that was a conscious thing. Maybe they were let's almost kind of play off of Dr. No when we introduced Sean a little bit with Live and Let Die with Roger. Yeah,
I think they definitely did. They must have had. I think that's too many coincidences to just be coincidence. Yeah. It's got to be some sort of pre-planning. But at no detriment to either film. I think it's...
Well, you know what they say, once is twice is coincidence. Shit.
Once is it happenstance?
That's it.
I know, we know.
It was happenstance, coincidence, enemy action, wasn't it? Once, twice, or three times. But there we go. Yeah, so yeah, we go. By that formula, then absolutely. Now, next up, interestingly, I happened to notice on our iTunes page we had a new review the other day from a listener called Ben Cherry. I'm calling you out, Ben. Hello. And he says, I was lucky enough to search for James Bond podcasts just days after these guys released their first one a year ago today. For that reason, I've been along from the very start. It's nice to hear people who are as into Bond as I am genuinely enjoying discussing the subject. Hilarious at times, the podcast is great fun and really informative as I've learned a tremendous amount of Bond facts, yet never had the courage to leave a quote of my own, maybe sometime in the next 12 months. Now, I'm not sure about you, Chris, but if Ben's been listening for a year and he hasn't sent in a quote yet, I think it's high time that he did. I think it's time you get involved, Ben.
I don't think the next 12 months. I think the next 12 days. Come on, Ben, we want to hear from you. Let's get a good quote going. Definitely.
Let's do it. If you're an old school listener, get involved. Send us a quote. We need some new quote material, and it will be good to hear from you, Ben. So you can't sneak in a review like that without us picking it up and throwing down the challenge. The glove has been thrown. So we will look forward to hearing from you, Ben. And hopefully in our next episode we'll have some Ben Cherry listener quote goodness to listen to. So what's been happening over on the James Bond Radio website this week, Chris?
Well, we've had quite a lot going on, actually. Our, as we mentioned earlier, news correspondent Linda's been working her magic as usual. So if people who haven't checked out, if they want to have a look, basically the latest news that Linda's put on is about Ben Whishaw. He was filming the film London Spy recently, so that sounds interesting. I don't quite know the full details behind the film, but it's mentioned Spy. It's got Ben Whishaw in it.
And he was on Vauxhall Bridge right outside MI6 as well, wasn't he?
He was indeed.
Apparently, a lot of people mistook it for a scene from Spectre.
Did they?
But it's an unrelated production called London Spy, so interesting to see what that's all about.
Yeah, definitely. There's also, she did a little part on the Queen's brush with Bond, which pretty much all the world saw during the Olympic Games and was absolutely amazing. I love that. And also a little bit about Sam Neill as well. I remember seeing some of the footage of him doing an audition, the classic sort of
screen test.
Romanova, the screen test, and so, he was obviously considered, and so there's a little bit about him and his thoughts on that. So that's quite nice. In addition to that, we've had a couple more. We've had Sean O'Hare's review of the David Arnold night in Dublin. He recently went over to do I think it wasn't just Bond, but there were a lot of Bond-themed songs he did play.
He did a concert last summer. I remember it was on the same night as the Pinewood event. And I didn't go, sadly, but I think it's like a cross-section of all his music, but obviously Bond features heavily throughout and kind of is like the climax of the show is all of his Bond music. So Sean wrote a really lovely review of his night out there, which is nice. And then lastly, in the website news roundup, Linda Zhu has posted the photo call from Rome. So Daniel and the principal actors have all arrived in Rome to start their work, and there's some great photos of them together. And again, I must say, Daniel is looking really good. He's looking really, really smooth and fit and ready for the role, and his hair's not too short still. It's great. I'm happy with it.
That's good. It's funny you said that, because I was about to say exactly the same thing about Monica Bellucci in a red dress.
Oh, goodness gracious me. Yeah.
She looks very fine indeed.
She does indeed.
Great. Well worth looking to.
So, before we cut to the interview with Alan J. Porter, the author of James Bond: The History of the Illustrated 007, it's time for a bit of Bond trivia, Chris.
Bond trivia.
So, what have you got for me this week?
Okay, well, I mixed up a little bit last week with the whole Bond speed trivia thing, so I'm not going to do the same again. But it's a slight mix. So I'm going to give you a normal trivia, as we normally do, and almost like a Bond fact / trivia. Now, I'll start with that one first. So do you remember when we were talking about, it's one of the podcasts, and one of the questions was, what is bon noir? And you know, with an overdose of bon noir from Goldfinger. Now, there are certain things which are mentioned in Bond films, and certain words where you might not know about. Obviously, some people will, some people won't. But I think it's quite nice just to find out the strange words that, like bon noir, which we found out was a cognac from France. Okay. And obviously, that's what that alluded to in Goldfinger. Now, there's another one which I think you might know or you might not. And there's a normal trivia as well. So the one along those lines is pigs, borscht, cake. There must be another way. But what is borscht?
Do you know what? It's borscht, isn't it? B-O-R-S-C-H-T.
C-H-T.
I think I might know what that is.
Okay, so that's that one. Now for the main trivia question, this is an interesting one. Who saved Bond's life in Geneva?
Oh, man, that is a good question. Oh, no, you've got me there. All right. Okay, good questions this week. I'm happy with that. All right, cool. My trivia question of the day is, what is the first Bond film to feature a fictional country?
Oh, that's a good one. That is a good one.
A fictional country, and what is that film? Okay, so that's our trivia section for today. So we're gonna answer those questions, reveal the answers later on in this episode. So it's time for our interview with Alan J. Porter. So we're going to discover all about the comic book world of James Bond, and hear from the authority on the subject, the author of James Bond: The Illustrated History of 007. So let's have a listen to what Alan had to say. Okay, so our latest James Bond Radio interview is Mr. Alan J. Porter, author of James Bond: The History of the Illustrated 007. We've both got our copies here, signed, I would like to add. Very nice. Thank you to Alan for that. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. It's great to be on the show. Really enjoy it.
Cool stuff. So, as per usual, we're gonna kick off with the quickfire questions, aren't we, Chris? Do you want to give that a go first?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'll fire away. Now, I'm not sure if you prepared any answers or not, but we'll see how we get on. So,
I think every time I listen to the show. So.
Oh, do you? Oh, right. Well, in that case, we could be in for some in-depth answers here. Okay. So the first question, Alan, is: what is your favourite James Bond film?
Well, you're going to love this one because it's On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Oh, good man. Nice.
I won't say it wasn't always.
Okay.
There was a time when it was You Only Live Twice. When I was younger, it was You Only Live Twice. I watched that over and over again.
Nice.
But Her Majesty's was the first movie I saw in the theatre. So that was my first exposure to Bond in the movie theatre, and I loved it as a kid. Then saw You Only Live Twice. Loved that, watched that over and over again. And then as I got older, I went back to On Her Majesty's. And it's actually, I think, the only one that really stands up. It's the only one that doesn't age. You can watch it over and over again. We went to see it at a big screening at a theatre a couple of years ago. And it was just as good on the big screen now as it was when I first saw it as a kid. So, yeah.
I think it's one of those, isn't it? It matures with age, doesn't it? And it's kind of like some of the other ones you'll watch. And then as you get older, you see the kind of the faults in them a little bit that you don't notice when you're a kid. Whereas for me, with Majesty's, I probably was the same in the sense that I probably didn't like it as much when I was a kid. But then as you kind of grow old and mature yourself, then that one kind of comes with you, I think.
I think it does. And I think the lack of gadgets and things in it helps stop it aging. Some of the other stuff, look at the gadgets and they age the movie so quickly. And On Her Majesty's, I think, is pretty much the one that is timeless.
Yeah,
that's a really good point, actually, about the gadgets, because it's always the gadgets are at the forefront of technology. I mean, take, for instance, the DB5 in Goldfinger, where you've basically got a sat-nav, which back then, no one had ever sort of realised whatsoever. Nowadays, pretty much every car's got them. Although
there's nothing special about it now. So.
No, exactly. But no, that's a really good point about that, actually. So you mentioned you went to see On Her Majesty's in the cinema. Was that when it very first came out, back in '69?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So give my age away there.
I just want to say, actually, for the benefit of our listeners who aren't watching on YouTube, you've got a very Ernst Stavro look about you going on today. We've got the white, well, sort of white pussycat right next to you that's giving that vibe off. It's good. You just need the Doctor Evil chair to complete the look. And
I've actually sat in that chair as well.
Oh, no way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The one from You Only Live Twice, the swivel chair with the big high back. Yeah,
that one sold recently at auction, didn't it? I remember it was up recently. Yeah, how did that happen?
The folks at the Ian Fleming Foundation. Well, I was actually two, and the Ian Fleming Foundation, which I'm a member of, we have one in one of those storage lockups. So last time we were up there, we sat in it and had our photographs taken sitting in it.
That sounds amazing. So do you have sort of these yearly events where everyone who's part of the membership sort of joins up and have a Bond night? Everyone takes turns sitting in a chair and with a cocktail. Is that how it goes down, or?
We get together twice a year to supposedly work on the vehicles that we own, but it usually ends up being a lot less work and a lot more sitting around drinking martinis, watching Bond movies, and just having a great time.
I imagine it would be a lot like a Spectre meeting. Is it something like that?
Don't interview anybody, or we haven't any of the ones I've been to yet.
But that sounds like my sort of party, definitely. And we just have to give a good shout out to the poster of Goldfinger behind you there as well, because that's not one that you see every day either, is it? That's that poster of Goldfinger.
Actually, that's the Italian Goldfinger. Wow. Yeah,
very nice.
So, quick fire question number 2: what is your favourite Bond book?
Okay. I'm going off the reservation with this one, and I'll tell you why. So it's not going to be.
You're not allowed to say the one you wrote.
Damn. Okay. Think now. It's actually not a Fleming book. I love the Fleming's books. I read first Bond I read was Man with the Golden Gun. First one I bought was Majesty's. I love Casino Royale. I love Moonraker. I think that's actually the best of the non-filmed Fleming books. But actually, my favorite Bond book, and I had to really think about this, is The Facts of Death by Raymond Benson.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, tell us about that then. How did that
there's a story behind that. So we lived in Austin, Texas for about 10 years. When we first moved there was a Mexican restaurant not far from our house, and on the wall was a plaque that said James Bond ate here.
Huh.
And that was my reaction, was like, well, what's that about? So it turns out that Raymond Benson, one of his books is actually set in Austin, Texas, and he has a scene where Bond goes and eats in that particular restaurant.
No way. It's funny, I was in Austin, Texas earlier this year, and I wish I'd have known that because I'd have gone.
So at that point, I was doing some writing for the Austin Monthly magazine, so I ended up pitching the idea of doing an article on Bond in Austin.
Yeah.
And through that, I got to know Raymond, and then through Raymond, that got me to the Ian Fleming Foundation membership. But and Raymond and I have ended up doing some book signings together. He's a really great guy. Yeah. But actually, all that aside, I actually really enjoyed the book. I think it's a good traditional Bond story. I think it would make an awesome movie if they probably will never ever film any of the continuation novels.
Yeah.
No.
But when I think about a classic Bond story, it's got the evil society. It's got a great plot. It's got Felix Leiter in his wheelchair running around Austin in a motorized wheelchair with a shotgun underneath it. It's got a great car and motorcycle chase. Good villain. I don't know. When I just sit back and think about, for me, what would be a prototypical Bond adventure, Facts of Death is it. So yeah, that's my.
We're going to have to revisit those because I read most of Raymond's books when they came out, and then just at the time when I went off to college and did all that kind of stuff was just as he was reaching the tail end of his kind of tenure. So I don't think I read the last 2 or 3 books of his. So I need to revisit those, and I can remember. Not High Time to Kill, 0-10 really well.
Yeah,
and I can remember High Time to Kill as well because I remember all the climbing in it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love High Time to Kill. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll have to. I mean, to be honest, we've got to revisit all of them. We've got to do all the Flemings, all the John Gardners, the whole shebang. So it's going to take us a while to get through them. But
we've just done that. So
cool.
Excellent. Okay, well, we'll get on to the Facts of Death. Hopefully, we've got a little while yet, haven't we? We've got to go through the Flemings, but we'll get around to it and we'll let you know once we've had a read of it. That'll be good.
Okay, yeah. When you read it, let me know if you agree with me. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, on to question number 3. Who is your favourite Bond girl from the film series?
Natalia Simonova.
Oh, interesting. Nice. That's the first time we've had that, isn't it, Tom?
It is indeed.
Yeah.
So expand on that.
Well, one, she reminds me of my wife, who is sat just off camera here. So
that's
Very
brownie
nice.
points in the bag.
There you go.
But no, I've always liked the character. She's good at her job. I like the fact that she's verbally spars with Bond. She's good with the quips. I love the boys and your toys. This is a standard MO for, you have to blow up every vehicle you get into. I just love all those quips. I think she's a good looking. And she brings her own skills to the mission, and is just a good, capable, good looking woman.
It's funny, isn't it? There seems to be like a dividing line with people's favourite Bond girls. There's the ones who are just drop dead gorgeous, your Honey Riders and your Solitaires and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got the ones who've actually got a bit of strength of character behind them. And I guess Natalia would be another one of those, wouldn't she?
But having just rewatched Live and Let, Jane Seymour has to be up there as well. So.
Jane Seymour is lovely, isn't she?
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. So with the only thing I would say about Natalia Smirnova, she's absolutely gorgeous, and I think her character is really good as well. But her character is never sort of portrayed in sort of a fancy dress or anything like that. She's on the beach in Costa Rica, and she's wearing that sort of nice little white number. But you never see her in the cocktail dress, or like you do with a lot of the other ones. It's a shame because she's normally in a cardi and a jumper, and that's kind of what you see, which is a bit of a shame for someone so beautiful. But,
particularly when you see Isabella, I can never remember how to pronounce her last name, Scorpo.
Scorocco,
I think.
Her photographs as a model and stuff. Yeah, I'm sure they could have worked a casino scene in there somewhere.
I have perused those in my time. Absolutely, I'm a big fan. Good stuff. Okay, so next question: who is your favourite James Bond actor?
I've always answered this one with I don't have one because they all bring something to the part.
Absolutely.
But again, you guys got me thinking of this over the last few weeks. George was an obvious one because of On Her Majesty's, and I'd met him a couple of times. He's a really nice guy, and had some great times with him. I really liked Timothy Dalton because he was close to the Fleming Bond. But actually thinking about it in retrospect, I think it's Pierce.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah. I think he combined Connery and Moore sort of sensibilities. I love the fact that he so clearly enjoyed being James Bond.
Yeah.
None of the others really brought that to the screen, that they actually really enjoyed being that character, and it really shows through. Despite the fact he suffered through some terrible movies, particularly at the end. I think he just played the part. And we watched November Man the other night, and it was like, that's Bond. I mean, he could still play an aging Bond, a Bond coming out of retirement.
Yeah. When I saw that trailer, that was the first thing I said. I was like, he could still pull it off to this day.
Yeah.
He could still do it.
Yeah, he does. And
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, and just from sort of following him on social media and stuff, I think he's becoming like Roger. He's now enjoying the fact that he was Bond. I mean, I know there was a period at the end there when it all went sour and he didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
But over the last couple of years, he's really sort of playing up on the fact that he was Bond. I mean, the commercial he did for the Super Bowl commercial, which sort of played on, the secret agent past and all that sort of stuff. I think he's starting to enjoy having been Bond as well. So, yeah.
Absolutely. He's one of those, we've said it before, haven't we, Chris? It's kind of like if you were to bump into Daniel in the street, he wouldn't really enjoy the interaction. If you went up to him and was like, oh, I'm a big fan, I love, he would be it would be a bit awkward, wouldn't it? Whereas I think with Pierce, every report I've heard of somebody meeting him, he's been just a real gentleman and just really nice and pleasant. I imagine out of everybody, I would say probably George, Roger, and Pierce would be the ones who would be the most welcoming as fans, I think.
The feedback I've heard from people who've met various ones of the actors is, the one that you always want to go out for a drink with is Roger Moore. He's the guy you want. He's the guy you want to go out for a drink with. Yeah. I think this would be a close second. And George, like I said, George is a nice guy too. Once you get him chatting,
So whereabouts did you meet George then? Tell us a little bit about that. How did that go?
That was actually good. That was the first time I met him was at actually both times at San Diego Comic Convention.
Okay.
Oh, right.
And I actually presented him with a copy of my book, and he was not happy because they pushed there was him and 5 of the Bond girls doing signings, and they were pushed off in a corner, and there was nobody in line for them.
No way.
You're joking.
There was no publicity about the fact they were there. So they were just tucked away in a corner, and George was sat there on his own looking really disgusted.
That's crazy.
Man,
So I went over and started chatting to him and presented him a copy of the book, and he flicked through the book, which was great because he sort of flicked right over the Her Majesty's poster and got to the one of Diamonds Are Forever.
Yeah.
And he looked at it, and he looked up at me and said, Connery didn't do a bad Lazenby impersonation in that movie, did he?
That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
I love it.
And then we just got chatting, and from that point on, he was great. I spent probably 20 minutes or so, half an hour, just chatting with him at that time. And then the next time he remembered me from the year previously. So that was cool.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice. It's funny that, isn't it? I went to, it wasn't Comic-Con, but it was like a smaller one. I think it was in Anaheim maybe a year or two ago. And for like the world of Bond, of how popular it is, it's crazy how there was just, of course, as soon as I went there, I was like, right, let me check out all the Bond stuff. And there just wasn't anything. There was like one poster of Skyfall, and that was it. And it's weird that they don't seem to have that presence at those kind of events.
They don't. I mean, it's probably going to screw me with Eon for any future things I want to ever do with them. But it's the one thing that they don't really do is engage with the fans or promote it to the fan base the way that the other big franchises do. They really just don't. They're happy to make the movies, put them out, and take, make the money that way, but they don't really pull in the fan community. Well, they don't seem to anyway. So, I think
the way that they do it is generally there'll be an event, but it'll be a Bond event, so it's only Bond. Whereas things like Comic-Con, which brings so many things together, because it's not just about Bond, it's probably less of a chance of having lots of sort of people there, I guess. Whereas you do get Bond only events, don't you?
Yeah, there was a stand there for the 50th anniversary with a couple of the vehicles and stuff. But again, that was done by the DVD distribution company. It wasn't done by Eon. It was done by the folks doing the DVD box set, promoting that. So
interesting.
Yeah.
And on the plus side, at least you got to have your 20 minutes with George, which wouldn't have been the case if it had been super popular.
Well,
so there you go. Yeah.
That's true.
So next quickfire question is: what is your earliest memory of Bond?
My earliest memory of Bond is the Thunderball board game.
Very nice.
Wow.
I remember you mentioned that in the opening chapter of the book, don't you?
Yeah. It all started with Plastic Frogman. A friend of mine, when we were very young, got it for Christmas. Got it for his birthday, which was a couple of months before Christmas, and we spent like every evening and weekend just playing this board game, and we had no idea who James Bond was, but I must have been talked about him because that Christmas my parents bought me the Corgi DB5 and the James Bond annual for Christmas.
Nice.
Which was full of pictures of Goldfinger and Thunderball, and that got me into Bond. And then they took me to the movies and to see the next Bond movie, and that turned out to be on Her Majesty's. And it was like, hang on, this is a different guy than the one that was in the book. But it's the moment that guy went underneath the snowplow, I was hooked. I mean, I've been a Bond fan from that moment onwards. So
he had a lot of guts, didn't he?
He did have a lot of guts. Yeah,
it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's the first time we've had somebody whose first exposure to Bond was the board game.
Yeah. I've been trying to find a copy over the last couple of years, but I can't find one of the. I'd love to get hold of another one just to have it in the house and stuff.
Yeah. I was going to say, I thought on your Ian Fleming sort of meetups, that would be, all around a Thunderball board game.
Actually, get Vespers inside us and get that out. That would be a good evening.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like a lot of fun. Okay, so on to question number 6. Now, this is sort of a twofold answer, I guess. Out of all the James Bond film locations, what is the most favourite that you've been to, and what is the most favourite that you'd like to go to that you haven't yet?
Oh, you've changed the question slightly. So what's the favourite one I've been to?
Yeah.
Actually, probably the most... I mean, I've been lucky. I've been, in the last year or so, I've been to Tokyo and Hong Kong, did a bunch of the locations there. I've been to London many times and done stuff there. But when we were in the UK at Christmas, we were on our way to St. Paul's Cathedral. We're walking down a side street, and all of a sudden we were there at the College of Arms.
Nice.
So it's at the corner, and it's like, there's the College of Arms, and I just freaked out. Go take a photograph, and ran across the road and took photographs of the forecourt and stuff. Yeah, so because that was like a complete surprise. We weren't actually going out looking for Bond locations. We were just walking by it, and it's like, oh my god, there it is. So I guess that would be a favorite one. Yeah. So
I think me and Tom had a little freak out session when we found it, didn't we, Tom? Although we weren't looking for it, but it's because it's so similar to in the film. You just see the gates and, like you said, the forecourt, and it's so good.
Yeah, I mean,
so nice.
Yeah, it looks identical. You could imagine a DB5 just being sat there. I mean, yeah, it was just So ones I want to go to, well, Piz Glory is the obvious one. Even though I've been to Switzerland a couple of times, I've never made it there. But I would say probably top of my list is Monaco.
Ah, nice. Yeah, that is a good one.
Because I'm a car guy. I'm a Formula One guy, so I want to go see the Grand Prix there. But also, I want to drive those roads that did the GoldenEye chase scene.
Chase.
Yeah, and another one of our favourite movies is Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief, and that's all set around there, and there's lots of good
nice
locations.
I've been there a couple of times actually, and Monaco is one of those just really strange places that you go there, and it's actually quite small, and it's just everywhere you look are sports cars and Ferraris and Lamborghinis left, right, and centre, and that little square where the casino is just like it oozes Bond. It really does. It's just got that whole feeling about the place.
Well, it's also in the 1967 the spoof Casino Royale as well. Don't they use that square in
That's right, yeah.
Casino in there? Yeah, and I'm off to Thailand in about 2 weeks, so I'm hoping to do Bond Island while I'm there. So.
Oh, very nice. Did you see my video?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Oh, very nice. You'll have to do a follow-up video and post it on our Facebook page or something.
Okay.
That'd be good.
Yeah, if I get out there, I hope to. I'm actually going for work, so I don't know how much time I'll have to get out there.
That's cool. So next question, if you can possibly whittle it down to one, what is your favourite scene in the series?
Without hesitation, the little Nelly chase scene in You Only Live Twice.
Wow, okay.
I don't know why. It plays no point in the plot. In fact, it's one of the most ridiculous plot devices ever.
There's a couple of those in that movie, isn't there?
There's a lot of them. But yeah, that's the one I always cite, that, if the villains had just stayed quiet, Bond would never have known they were there.
Yeah.
But I'm like I say, I'm a vehicles guy. I just love the auto gyro. And I've been lucky to see it a couple of times in action and get up close to it and see it at air shows and things. And actually got to talk to Commander Wallace a couple of times.
Oh, nice!
Wow.
So it's always had a soft spot for that. That's always. And when we were at the Bond in Motion thing in London in December, they got little Nelly there, and I just stopped, and they were running that scene over and over again on the screen behind it. I just stood there and watched it. I don't know. Great cars around and vehicles around, and I've just stood there watching this thing I've watched 1,000 times before. So
it's funny, isn't it? I suppose the little Nelly is the DB5 in the air, isn't it? That's essentially what it is. So it's a classic Bond thing. I actually saw one fly over my house recently. It was bright orange, didn't look anything like the little Nelly paint job, but it's such a weird little vehicle. I'd love to have a go in one and see what it's like to actually fly one.
I always want to know the story of the previous mission, because if you remember when Q pulls it out, he says, "We've made some adjustments since last time you used it."
That's right, he did, didn't he?
So I always know what that other mission was when he first used Little Nelly.
There's a lot of those. There's that line in From Russia with Love where Bond says there was a time with him and M in Tokyo, and then M cuts him off. I want to know all about that one. That's another one that I've never noticed. So well spotted on that.
Yeah. Maybe they're at one and the same mission. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe.
Okay, so just to round off the quick fire question. Now, this one I think you might have already answered with your Fleming gang get together. But what is the most Bondian thing you've ever done?
Well, before that, I would have said sat behind the wheel of the Lotus from For Your Eyes Only.
Really?
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did that come about?
It was doing a promotional tour when the movie came out, and some business connection of my father's managed to get us over the velvet rope, and we managed to get in and sit behind the wheel and imagine we were driving the car, so that was pretty cool.
Nice.
But yeah, having joined the Ian Fleming Foundation, we own, I think it's 33 Bond vehicles and props currently. So getting to actually work on those and play with them. So, I've sat in the Q-boat. First weekend we were up there, we ended up working on one of the Aston Martin full-size prop Aston Martins from The Living Daylights, the ones with the ski runs out.
Excellent.
We've got a whole bunch of the vehicles there. When we were up there last time, our newest acquisition is the Spectre helicopter from Russia with Love.
No way.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
just getting to sit in that and in the controls of that, playing with that.
Yeah.
Ride on the snowmobile that Brosnan uses in Die Another Day. Sorry to mention that movie.
Brilliant.
I would say the best Bond moment is probably not mine, it's probably my wife's. When we were up there, we have the Ford Mondeo that Daniel drove in Casino Royale.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
On the way to the beach club, which is actually the pre-production Ford Mondeo. It's not a real one. It's like a mock-up that Ford made.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And we were moving the stuff around. We also have, with the Q-boats, we have a full-size dummy of Piers that was used for some of the long shots. And he was sat in the back of the Mondeo, and we had to move it. So my wife got behind the driver's the wheel of the Mondeo as we were moving it around.
Yeah.
She basically put on Facebook, I've just driven Pierce Brosnan around in Daniel Craig's car.
That's a cool moment. I like that.
Her Facebook feed exploded from all her friends.
That's amazing. That epitomises the whole Boys with Toys line, I think.
Oh, definitely, yeah. There are ladies in the foundation as well who come up and work on the stuff. But yeah, it is a lot of boys with some very expensive and very cool toys.
Sounds like it. Cool stuff.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah.
I have to get you guys up there sometime, I guess. You could do a podcast from them.
Definitely.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So.
Okay, so you wrote the book, James Bond, The History of the Illustrated 007. There it is. And now, what was it about the comic book Bond then that kind of grabbed you initially? Like, you seem to be like the expert in the illustrated Bond. So what is it about that's so appealing for you? It was the comic strips in the Daily Express that really first caught me. And for me, they were the perfect blend of the cinematic Bond and the Fleming Bond. Yeah.
They took the stuff from the Fleming books, added to them, gave them a real visual appeal, did a lot of stuff that ended up in the movies way before the movies actually started. And were really, for me, just that they were. If I had in the early days had to say what was my perfect Bond, it was really the Bond of the comic book, of the comic newspaper strips in the Daily Express, which I used to sneak into the school library and read every morning, pretending I was reading the latest current affairs stuff before I went to class. And
was it hidden in between, in like the centerfold that you open up and then you get?
We were actually encouraged to go in the school library and read the daily papers, but I think they actually wanted us reading the news, not the comic strips.
Nice. So that, like, for me especially, like that most Bond fans know about the whole Daily Express comic strips and all that kind of stuff, but there seems to be like a whole undiscovered world of Bond comics. Like in the book you mentioned that there's tons of like foreign language ones that have original stories and all that kind of stuff that I've never come across before and all that kind of stuff. So could you sort of give us like the kind of the intro to that world of like the comic book Bond? Yeah,
I mean the interesting thing that most comic book fans didn't know, and I didn't really know until I really started doing the research for the book, is there's been more original James Bond stories told in comics format than any other medium. So more than the house novels, more than the movies, more than anything else. But even the newspaper strips, they started off doing the Fleming stories, plus they did Colonel's Son, but on top of that, they did 33 original stories in the newspaper strips.
Wow.
Then there was a short-lived series in Cuba, in Chile, which ran for like 5 years, where they did a whole bunch of original stories. Yeah. And then once the floodgates opened in the 80s, when they started doing the continuation novels, some of the other people who had the comics franchises started doing the original stories. So there's a whole bunch of original stories done out of Sweden, and then there's a whole bunch of unofficial ones, and Japan, where they did actually license the books, but basically just took the names of the characters and the situations and spun completely new stories around them. So there's this whole world. I think in the book we cover about 145 different James Bond adventures that have been told in comic book formats around the world. And again, I started off, it was just the newspaper strips. Then I knew about the couple of failed attempts in America to get a James Bond comic book off the ground. But then finding out that, in other parts of the world, it's been a regular sustained success, with some ups and downs, but there has been this regular thing pretty much of from the 1950s pretty much through to the 1990s of there's always been a James Bond comic book series going somewhere in the world.
And that's a huge amount of material once you put it all together. Now, with all these sort of foreign comic books, have there been English translation adaptations of some of them or all of them or none of them? I mean, How much material is there out there that's on sort of unread, as it were, perhaps by sort of English translation?
Yeah, none have been translated into English. Most of it went the other way, where it was the newspaper strips were translated from the English into various different comics. Various different series abroad. And then a lot of the ones that were done in Sweden were published, translated into, other Scandinavian languages or other European languages, but not really, with a couple of exceptions. There's maybe 2 or 3 that actually did end up. They were either translated or they were actually produced in English and Swedish at the same time, like 2 different editions. But nothing really came back into the UK or US market from the other markets.
That's crazy. So there's an entire world of Bond storytelling out there that, unless you can read those languages, you're screwed, basically.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, some of them want to read.
So have you had? Yeah, I was going to say you need to get some sort of personal translators in and just sit down with them and let them read it to you as you're looking through the pictures and everything.
Yeah, there has been a few online where people have gone online and actually done translations online. So if you really search them out, you can find a few translations here and there.
Interesting. So if you were to take like a Bond fan who has no knowledge of the comics, where would you say is like the best place to begin if you were to sort of begin that journey?
If you read, the best place if you want to make the investment is the newspaper strips. The UK publisher Titan Books did 17 volumes. They've reprinted basically the whole 25-year span of the newspaper strips, but it starts with adaptations of the Fleming books. So if you get the first 3 or 4, you can see the style evolve as it goes from Casino Royale all the way on through to The Spy Who Loved Me. By the time they get to The Spy Who Loved Me, which was the last one they did, the first half of it is a brand new story. The guy who was writing it, Jim Lawrence, basically took one throwaway line in Fleming's story and spun this whole new story around it. So the first half of that story is brand new material.
Interesting. I was going to ask how they handled that story, actually.
Yeah. So, and then Lawrence became the first person to actually do an official Bond continuation story, because his next story, The Harpies, was actually published just before Colonel's Son was published. So the first Bond continuation was not Colonel's Son. It was actually in the newspaper strips.
Interesting. Wow. And that was The Harpies.
The Harpies, yeah.
Okay, so tell us a bit about that story then. What happens in The Harpies?
Oh, wow. It's basically a guy who is an industrialist who has a fleet of girls in very early paraglider, hang glider wings stealing industrial secrets from places around the UK.
Very nice.
Yeah, I like it. That's good.
And of course, with a lot of this stuff being published in the 70s, the women lose their clothes at a regular interval as well.
Brilliant. Sold. I'm going to get a copy of that immediately.
It's so windy up there when you're hang gliding. What else are you going to do? They just fly off, don't they?
Well, there's actually one of them called a Nevesky Nude, which actually starts with a naked girl in a parachute. So how's that for a pre-title sequence?
Yeah, I'm hooked.
I can't believe I haven't discovered this already. This sounds like right up my street. So, like, in terms of like the comic book world, there's kind of like, I guess there's 2 kind of angles to look at it. You've got the artists and you've got the writers who actually pen the stories. So, like, who are some of the classic Bond comic book artists providing the visuals?
There's a guy called Horak who did he's 17 years on the Bond strip. He had a very sort of interesting sort of style that was a lot of blacks, a lot of speed lines, gave it a lot of dynamic stuff. John McCluskey, who did the first few years on the Bond strip, he was really the first guy who gave us a look at what Bond should look like. He was the first guy who actually designed what Bond should look like. Fleming had actually commissioned somebody to create a picture of Bond based on Fleming's description. Unfortunately, we don't know who the artist is, but the picture's still around. It's in the book.
Yeah.
And basically, he looks like a pre-war 1930s movie star. So McCluskey threw that out and made him more rugged. And when you look at Sean Connery's sort of a bit more like McCluskey's drawing, even though McCluskey's drawing was done before Connery was cast.
Yeah.
Then sort of over the years, and one of my favorite books is Permission to Die by Mike Grell. Mike is a huge Bond fan, and he went back to the Fleming stuff and made it, took Fleming's description and produced a Bond that looks really cool. But he also did a lot of nods to the traditional, the movies. So you've got some great stuff in there with M's Office, the DB5, the Hat on the Hat stand, Moneypenny. Did a whole bunch of research. That's a great 3-issue series. Is Permission to Die. If you just want to read one quintessential Bond story, for me, that's the one to go find and read.
So those stories, they're kind of available in like omnibus form, are they, or do you kind of hunt down the originals?
Some of them are, and some of them you've got to hunt down the originals. Unfortunately, there's 2 or 3 that, like the first couple of issues were done and then they were never finished. So there are some that have missing issues floating around. So unfortunately, nobody's ever read, other than the Titan books doing the newspaper strips, never, because it was done with so many different publishers over the years. It's the only way you can really read them all is to actually really go hunt them down.
Yes. I remember there was one you mentioned in the book where they published a Bond strip in the Daily Star of all places.
Yes.
Which, if you're not from England, you wouldn't know. The Daily Star is somewhat a somewhat grotty tabloid newspaper, basically, that's known for having boobs on the front cover rather than any sort of real journalism. So that was an interesting choice, wasn't it? Pairing up Bond with Daily Star.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's where the Bond strip went to die, because that was the end of it. Once they put it in the Daily Star, they think they did like 3 or 4 stories, and they pulled the plug halfway through a story. They never finished it. So
wow,
it just petered off, and then they never finished the story. They'd actually written it, so some of the foreign translations have the complete story, but the British one in the Daily Star just stopped in the middle of the story and never went anywhere. So that was an idea. Yeah, it should have, when they brought it back, they should have gone back to the Daily Express, but the Express owned the Star and they thought it would get a wider readership in the Star, and it just didn't work. Yeah.
How wrong they were. Oh, well,
yep.
That's a shame. Yeah. So when it comes to sort of writing novels, we know that obviously the Ian Fleming Foundation has sort of a say in what's accepted and what's not, and they have to prove things. With the people that write the comic books or that wrote the comic books, were there any sort of parameters that they had to work within, or were they given free rein to create whatever stories they wanted?
So Ian Fleming Publications, I think, basically once they gave them the license, were fairly well. Yeah, they did look over them. Certainly for the newspaper strips and and then a lot of the comic books were also licensed by Eon, so they were adaptations of the movies. But sort of in the 80s and 90s, when there was some of the more original ones, for instance, there's perhaps one of the best known ones that you can actually get as a collected edition is called Serpent's Tooth, which is very stylish, looks very much like the movies, but there was a lot of stuff that they couldn't use from the movies because it was licensed by Ian Fleming Publications, not by Eon. So it depends who licenses as to what they could or couldn't use within those stories. But when you read some of the Swedish ones, I'm sure nobody was looking at them. When you get to the one where the Millennium Falcon makes an appearance, and Bond is actually helping a spaceship of crashed aliens get back to their home planet. I'm sure nobody at Ian Fleming Publications was approving that script.
You're kidding.
This is serious.
I am serious.
Was it an April the 1st release date, or?
No, it's the guy who wrote those. A writer called Jack Satter. His Swedish did stuff for the Swedish Bonds. They were crazy. Actually, one of my favorite ones is he has Bond and Felix Leiter trying to track down the bad guys, and the way they do it is they actually go to a estate agent who specializes in hideouts for bad guys. Ask this estate agent, by the way, has Blofeld rented anything from you recently? And he goes, oh yeah, he's rented this new warehouse.
You are kidding me.
No.
That sounds amazing.
that is in Bond 24. You know that, don't
you? yeah. There's no more breaking to the lawyer's office. You just go to the estate agent and ask where the new HQ is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy talk. So, in terms of the actual, all the storytelling in these comic books, kind of, who were the classic comic book writers then who dealt with the actual story that were in the books?
Well, I mentioned Jim Lawrence on the who did the newspaper strip for, like I said, 17 years. He's probably the best. He's the most prolific Bond writer, which, by the way, is a great trivia answer. If you ask people, who wrote the most James Bond stories, it isn't Fleming and it isn't Gardner. It's actually Jim Lawrence.
How about that?
You're filling us with so many trivia answers here. It's amazing. Who was the first continuation author? Who's written the most about Bond? This is brilliant. This is good knowledge to have.
And there hasn't really been anybody who's sort of done a consistent run there. What's tended to happen since is people have come on, like I said, Mike Grell did his three issue shot that he both wrote and drew. Serpent's Tooth was a guy called Doug Munchie. He does a lot of good conspiracy, high adventure stuff. He did a great one. Then some of the other ones were really just, I say, adaptations of the movies. David Lloyd did a pretty good one. So, but there's nobody who's really, if you like, been on a long run of books since then, long enough to really stamp themselves as being a James Bond creator, if that makes sense. Yeah. Which is unfortunate because nobody's really had the license. The license has jumped from publisher to publisher to publisher over the years, and nobody's really had a good sustained run. So, I've been involved with 3 attempts to get the license from various publishers, and it's never gone anywhere. A few months ago, they did announce that Dynamite Comics in the US had picked up the license, but it's all gone quiet. We haven't heard anything about titles, writers, artists. Haven't had any responses to any emails I sent them, so I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah. We mentioned that, didn't we, Tom? Sorry, we mentioned that like a few months ago. We heard about it, Dynamite Comics over there, because I think that was the same time that we heard about Anthony Horowitz doing the next continuation novel. So we had that. We had the new Young Bond. And we had the comics, and we thought, oh, great, But yeah, like you said, I was going to ask you because we hadn't heard anything. But so it's gone quiet then, and we don't know what's coming up.
Yeah, I've sent them several emails just asking what's going on, or if they they want any research or background or whatever. I'd be more than happy to help. And I've not heard anything, and I've not seen anything in the comics press either. So I really.
Interesting. Was that the one where they were saying that it would be exploring Bond's younger life in the army or in the navy rather? Was that Dynamite Comics?
Yeah, they were talking about doing a prequel to Casino Royale and stuff like that, and so
there was also mention of them using classic villains, weren't there, at one point, like Goldfinger or Oddjob or Blofeld within the comics, which sounded quite strange if Bond was younger. And I mean, obviously, who knows what was going on, but I'm sure that was mentioned at one point as well.
As long as he's not a job in a purple jumpsuit like James Bond.
That's the image that I had when I read it. And, no. It's a nightmare.
So I think I remember I bought Serpent's Tooth. I remember reading that one. And does this ring any bell? I remember there was one of the panels I remember is he has this little backpack helicopter.
Yeah,
is that Serpent's Tooth? And he kind of holds onto the handles and like the rotor is like about 3 inches above his head, and he's kind of flying along on that, which I thought was quite funny. And I remember thinking it was kind of like Die Another Day dialed up to the extreme in terms of craziness.
There's speedboat stuff like the Moonraker speedboat. It goes over the top, and then the villain's like got a lizard face and lives in a flying saucer, and it's way over the top, but it's good fun. Yeah. It's actually a reprinted Bond story in history so far.
Is it really interesting?
Yeah.
Sounds a bit like Inspector Gadget, when his rotors come out of his hat.
He does have that, doesn't he? Yeah. So what are some examples of, I imagine the Fleming stories are pretty grounded, but what are some examples of some really sort of grounded Bond comic book stories versus the ones that go really crazy?
I always remember the crazy ones. They're much more fun to talk about. I keep coming back to it because it is my favourite, but the Grell Permission to Die is very grounded because he, like I said, Mike Grell is a big, huge Bond fan, a big Fleming fan, so really well grounded. The interesting thing about that one is it's a Cold War story. Between issues 2 and 3 coming out, the Berlin Wall came down.
Oh, wow.
So he has this whole story about rescuing somebody and part of Bond having to bring them back from behind the Berlin Wall. And halfway through the series, the Berlin Wall comes down and the Cold War's over.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, the story's not very relevant. But but you have to, if you think about it being a Cold War story, that's a really good, solid spy story. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, interesting stuff. So what would you say, we talked about Dynamite Comics just there, what would you say is the future of Bond comics? Like, what would you like to see happen, and then what is likely to happen?
I'd love to see a good continuing series with a stable creative team on it that can actually bring their own spin to Bond. That's really takes a continuation of Fleming's Bond. I think I've written about it in the book. I think Bond really works when he's in the now, but I'd really also like to see some period pieces, some good 1960s traditional and spy stuff done in the comics. I think that would be easier to do then it probably would. It would work better in the comics than I think it would in the movies.
Yeah. It's funny.
They'll bring it to the present. They'll make it if you like, a prequel of the Daniel Craig Bond.
Yeah.
Unless you get in there first, get your name in there, and then maybe we can get a 60s one out.
Well, I say we're 0 for 3 on trying that so far. So
it's funny. I saw. I don't know whether you've seen the trailer yet. I saw the trailer for the Man from U.N.C.L.E. movie that's coming out later in the year.
Yeah.
And I used to love Man from U.N.C.L.E. when I was a kid, and watching that made me think, I would, as much as Bond is amazing as he is at the moment in the present day, I would love to see a period, like, when I say period, I mean like either classic 60s or even like classic 50s Fleming era Bond made, to strictly to the books, it'd be amazing.
I would love to see that, too. Actually, the other one that reminded me was the beginning of X-Men First Class with Michael Fassbender.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When he's doing chasing the Nazi around Argentina and stuff like that. I mean, the superpowers bit aside, it was like, for me, that was his audition to play Bond.
Definitely. Yeah.
And it was like, I would love to see him doing a Bond movie set in that time period. That would
be amazing.
That was what came to my mind as well. There's that scene where he's in the guy's office in the grey suit, and it's just, that is James Bond sitting there as well.
Yeah. And
I think Matthew Vaughn was pretty keen on drawing the comparisons with the early 60s Connerys when he did it, because he's a huge Bond fan as well, isn't he?
Definitely, yeah. So like I say, I'd like to see a period one, but I think they'll probably do something set in the Daniel Craig continuity. So if anything comes out, like you said, it's been a while and we haven't heard anything, so I don't know what's going to happen.
Okay. So tell us a bit more about the Ian Fleming Foundation then. Like, what exactly is that? How do you join? Do you get murdered if you try and leave? What's the deal?
I don't know about the trying to leave bit, because I've got no intention of leaving, so I don't want to. The Ian Fleming Foundation basically is a non-profit charity organisation here in the States that's designed to promote the works of Ian Fleming and the studies around Ian Fleming. And we do that by rescuing and restoring James Bond movie vehicles and props, and then loaning them out or renting them out for exhibits. So half the vehicles in the Bond in Motion exhibit in London currently are actually owned by the Ian Fleming Foundation.
Oh, wow.
And basically any profits of that we make from that then goes to funding educational grants and promoting Fleming's legacy through literature and things like that. So I said we currently own about 33 vehicles. A lot of them are currently on display at various exhibits around the world, mainly at Bond in Motion. But we have a secret location here in Illinois. And it is literally secret. They won't give, even as a member, I'm not allowed to know the address.
You're kidding me.
No, we know how to get there. We know the directions.
Yeah.
And in April, we're even moving from there to another secret location, which is bigger, because we've now got the helicopter and a couple of other things. We need more room, so we're now moving to another secret location. So they won't give us the actual address, so we can't put it in our GPS, but they'll give us the verbal directions to get there.
So do you call each other by code numbers when you get there?
No. So, basically we get together twice a year for a sort of long weekend working on the vehicles, whatever. So last time we were there, I was working on Sanchez's Cessna, the one that gets upside down from the... It's great, but it's also, in some ways, you get to see behind the curtain. So, I was like, oh, great, Sanchez's Cessna. But when you get there, it's actually just a shell of a plane. Yeah. And then there's actually no real cockpit. There's just basically a poster of the pictures of the dials stuck on a piece of plywood.
You're kidding me.
So the one that was hung upside down from the plane with, when he had his nose pressed against the windshield is just basically a shell and a mock-up. So it sort of pulls the curtain away a bit, but it's pretty cool. Got to work on the Vulcan. We have the model of the Vulcan from Thunderball. We have Goldfinger's private jet, the model, which is fun because it's actually, on one side it's painted as Goldfinger's jet, and on the other side it's painted as the jet of the President of the United States. So if you watch the movie, when it's Goldfinger's jet, it's always flying from right to left. And when it's the President's jet, it's always flying from left to right.
No way. I think that's my funnest fact I've discovered so far. That's a great one.
Because it's the same model, just painted different schemes on each side of it. So, we get together, we do that. And like I say, and then last October, we tried having our first Bond film festival for the 50th anniversary of Goldfinger, and we showed a bunch of Bond movies. We had Maud Adams and Lana Wood came up for the weekend, so got to spend the weekend and hang out with a couple of Bond girls for the weekend, which was pretty cool.
Very nice. I'm very envious.
So yeah. So I'm going to show you one other thing. Okay, so
sure.
Sitting next to me, right? I don't know because I can't see. Can you see this?
If you hold it a little bit higher, like hold it right up in front of your face.
Okay, yeah, Fujitsu.
This is actually Q's laptop from The World Is Not Enough. This is the actual laptop that Q plugs into the Cubo.
No way!
Wow!
As you can see, it's actually a little worse for wear.
Yeah.
So I'm going to open it up. Hang on a minute.
Oh, that is so cool.
Oh, you can actually see that. Oh, very nice.
So it's all a bit beaten up. So I've got this. I'm going to try and restore it over the next few months. So this is my mission. This is my current mission. The IFF is to restore Q's laptop.
That's awesome.
That's so good. So in terms of restoring, is it a case of so you get a vehicle or you get a prop or you get a gadget? When you see these things, they've been on loads of tours or they haven't been kept up to right, and basically you need to sort of do a bit of touching up with a paintwork, or what sort of thing do you generally do when you have something like that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's, just basic body work, paint work, bringing some of the props back to making them as they look like on screen, because quite often, stuff gets changed with other owners. Actually, if you're ever, I don't know if you've been to the Bond in motion, but the Mustang,
that didn't look too healthy.
Doesn't look too healthy and has a horrible paint job on it because basically somebody tried to put a Starsky and Hutch type paint job over the top of it. So, so we haven't actually had a chance to restore that one yet. I mean, they wanted it for the exhibit, and so it's gone in as we found it. So that needs redoing. But
sacrilege.
Actually, one of the favorite ones that my wife and I like working on is it has about 2 seconds on screen. It's a little Jeep from The World Is Not Enough, the Russian Atomic Energy Commission Jeep that drives back in the background, and it has about a 2 second on-screen life. But it looks ever so sad. It's got holes in it, and it's sort of, the paintwork's peeling and stuff. So whenever we're up there, that's the one that we tend to go and work on.
Once that's repaired, would you ever just pop down to the shops in your Russian Energy Atomic Department Jeep just to see what might happen?
Actually, the one I really like to pop down the road in is we actually have one of the Jags from Die Another Day with the big machine gun on the back.
Wow. Okay. Excellent stuff.
So I'd love to drive that to work one day just to see what we're actually going to go.
I think people would give you room on the road.
Do you have the Vanquish as well?
No, we don't.
Well, you could have said you did, and then just
nobody would know.
Yeah. Very nice. So what's next on the agenda for Alan J. Porter? Then, have you got any more Bond books on the way or anything like that?
Funny you should ask. It's not like you were prompted. Yeah, we do. My wife and I have just turned in the manuscript for the James Bond Lexicon, which is going to be an encyclopedia of all things Bond, movies, novels, comics, TV. It's going to be, it came out at just under 700 pages. So it's actually going to probably be a 2-volume set. And we're scheduled to get it out. It should be out around the same time that Spectre comes out. We're hoping to get it out just before the movie comes out. Nice. It's currently it's currently at the deliberate timing. Currently, the publisher is being copy edited, and then if everything goes to plan, it should be out around September, October.
Excellent work.
Once you get some sort of pictures of it, or the cover photo or whatever, send it over to us, and we'll stick it on the Facebook page so everyone can have a pre-look before it goes.
Yeah, I'll send you the link to the page and the cover art. Yeah, the cover art looks pretty cool. So excited to see that one come together.
Cool. Sounds good. So you said your wife was involved with it as well.
She's co-writing. Yeah.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny you should mention Uncle, because our next book for that publisher is going to be a Man from Uncle lexicon. So
nice.
Excellent.
When I was a kid, a very young kid, I was talking probably about 5. I actually thought Napoleon Solo was cooler than Bond for a very short while.
Oh, yeah.
I feel dirty now, but looking back, I was a big fan. I always used to have a pen, and I would twist the top and pretend it was my little walkie-talkie thing.
Channel D.
Yeah.
So we're in the early stages of doing the research for that one. So we don't have a publication date on that yet. But
very nice.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. So we're just sort of coming towards the end of the interview, but there's a couple of pretty big questions that we'd like to ask. Now, you mentioned Spectre there. It's not really all that long away. With February, October's not too long. I don't know how much or how little you've been looking into trying to find out about the film and everything like that, but what would you like to see out of Bond 24?
Okay, I actually don't like the fact they called it Spectre.
Oh, okay.
I would have rather they revealed the Spectre thing just came out in the movie. That it was a surprise. That's,
the impact would have been pretty impressive if it had just been in the movie.
Better, a bit like they did with the fate of M in Skyfall, kept it quiet, and then at the end it was just like, it's Spectre behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that probably Quantum's either becomes Spectre or is in some way connected to Spectre, unless they're completely leading us down the garden path with the title and it's got nothing to do with the Spectre as we know it. But I don't think they'd have fought that hard to get the rights back and then not use it. So it's I put on my Bond Twitter feed. I think he's got a definite Majesty's vibe to what we've seen so far. So I'm hoping that's seeing Bond back on skis is great. And I think those sort of scenes always work really well. So just because of the stuff I'm going on, the publicity for the book and the Twitter feed and the Tumblr account I have, I'm sort of, picking up stuff like you guys are as it's released and sort of trying to do my own speculation around it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be they've got to complete that Quantum story somehow. So I think it's going to be a Quantum sort of merges into Spectre thing. I'm not sure about the Oppenheimer thing because, if you know Bond and stuff, he's got such a close relationship with that character. That he was a father-like, he was almost his surrogate father. I don't know whether they're going to turn that character into a bad guy. I don't know.
It's supposed to be Hans Oberhauser's son, isn't it? It's not actually Hans Oberhauser himself. So
a bit like Quarrel Jr. But
it'll be pulling the heartstrings or something like that. I think to some extent. Yeah.
So.
Do you know what? That's obviously he won't show up this time around, but that's somebody I would like to see show up again in a future Bond. Is Quarrel? Wouldn't that be cool to see him again?
Yeah.
So would it be? Quarrel Jr. or something.
I almost thought that's what Sharky should have been in.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
He's pretty much that sort of character, wasn't he? Really, Sharky.
Yeah. So I think it would have made more sense because that relationship was already there with Bond and Leiter. So I don't know whether they didn't have the rights to use the name again or something. I don't know. But.
Cool. So one final question then, which is if you could have your ultimate Bond film starring any actor with any director doing any story you wanted, what would you have?
Okay, am I allowed to time travel?
Absolutely, you can do whatever you want. It can be alternate dimensions, it can be whatever you want.
Okay, in that case, I want to go back to 1989, not make License to Kill, but keep Dalton as Bond, Robert Darby as the bad guy, Edison as Felix Leiter, Natasha Richardson as Mary Goodnight.
Okay.
Ooh.
Okay, so what movie am I making?
I guess you're making The Actual Man with the Golden Gun, aren't you?
Exactly. Yeah. I want to see a correct version of the man with the golden gun. Yeah, and I've always thought as soon as Darby came on screen, it was like he should be Scaramanga.
That's a good point, actually. That's a really good point. I've never thought of that before. Yeah,
I've always wanted to see that. It was him as Scaramanga, and the only way to really do it. And I think with that darker story, it would have to be Timothy Dalton.
Yeah.
So
that's a good one.
Wow.
I don't know why they don't do that. Like this, we've said it so much lately, haven't we, Chris? That there's so much of the Fleming stuff that they haven't used. Moonraker, the entire book, pretty much.
Oh yeah, Moonraker would be a great one to do.
Yeah, it's weird that they haven't done it. I mean, with some of the movies, License to Kill is a good example. For Your Eyes Only is another good example where they've melded different aspects together to make one story, and pretty well with those two. They did with those. I don't see why they can't just do that some more, and because every time Fleming is involved, it results in a better film. I think. Yeah.
I mean, all my favorite Bond ones are the ones Bond movies are the ones that are closer to the book. Yeah.
Cool. So so you got Timothy Dalton as Bond. You got Robert Darby as Scaramanga. Natasha Richardson as Goodnight. Who would you have directing it?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. I don't know who directed License to Kill. I don't know, but I quite enjoyed that one. I thought it was a good dark movie. So
that was John Glenn. Yeah,
a John Glenn one. Oh yeah, of course there was. There was a stupid pigeon thing, wasn't there? Yeah, it had to be John Glenn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have the pigeon scene though.
You wouldn't. That's the only thing you take out.
Cool. So where can our listeners find you online then? Have you got a website, the Twitters and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, you can find my personal stuff at alanjporter.com. Gives you a link to all my writing, because I also write. I just had a new Sherlock Holmes story come out this week. I write stuff like that. I write comic books as well as non-fiction, pop culture stuff, Bond stuff. And you can follow me on Twitter for at Alan J. Porter. Or if you want Bond specific, if you go to jamesbondlexicon.com, it will take you to the Tumblr feed for the upcoming book. And again on Twitter at Bond Lexicon, you can. I usually post a little snippet from an entry pretty much every day, and then every few weeks I actually give a sneak peek of some of the artwork that's going in the book as well as all the latest Spectre news and stuff that I pick up.
Okay, good stuff. So make sure all JBR listeners go and check that out right now.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Well, we'll have to get you back on when the new book comes out.
One other thing.
Oh yeah.
IanFlemingFoundation.org if you want to know more about what we do and the charity and want to take a look at all the vehicles we own. IanFlemingFoundation.org.
Awesome. Sounds good.
I'll definitely be checking that out.
Cool. Well, good stuff. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Alan. It was an illuminating. I've been saying that a lot lately. It was an illuminating chat, and for me especially, the whole comic book side of things is really uncharted territory for me. So it's good to learn some stuff.
Go buy some and enjoy them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, it'll be good. We'll definitely check them out. And I think for all our JBR listeners, there's going to be so many trivia questions pillaged from this interview. So I think they're going to watch this one over and over and over, because there's going to be a lot of good trivia to be had from here. So thanks a lot for that.
Thanks, guys. It was great. It's good fun.
Cool. Well, we'll see you again soon, Alan. Take care.
Cheers.
All right, bye.
Cheers, Alan. Bye.
Cool. So that was an interesting interview. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I'm definitely going to investigate Permission to Die and check out that story first. I think there's lots to be discovered.
Yeah, well, huge amounts by the sounds of it. I mean, for me, I'm a bit of a comic book virgin, as it were, when it comes to Bond. I've got the Titan one of On Her Majesty's, which I love. I've got a couple of the Titan ones. I think I'd be tempted to actually get the full set of the Titan books, because they look great as well. So that's something I'm going to do. But all these other stories, like you mentioned, the Harpies as well, and some of the original stories, which obviously we won't know about or we won't have read, that would be quite interesting. But I also really like the fact that he's part of this Ian Fleming Foundation. They're like, oh, so guys, what are we going to do this weekend? Oh, let's just come around, we'll have martinis. Oh no, I'll touch up little Nelly. You can sit on Blofeld's chair over there while you're having, whatever you're having, and It's just like boys and toys and just doing up all these Bond props and whatever. That would be pretty cool way to spend your weekend.
It does sound like a good weekend, doesn't it? Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll have to see if we can get ourselves invited over for one of their meetings. And maybe Alan will take his pussycat with him. You never know. Yeah.
Very secretive meetings they are too.
Indeed they are. So
it's like Quantum.
Yeah. So make sure you go and grab a copy of Alan's book. There's plenty to learn in there, and if you're a comic book, a Bond comic book virgin like us, then it's definitely worth getting involved in and grabbing a copy. And obviously his new book, the James Bond Lexicon, coming out later in the year. So make sure you look out for that.
As well.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think it's time we answered our Bond trivia questions, don't you, Chris?
Bond trivia. Yeah, although just before we do that, there is something that there weren't really any sort of Bond facts outside of what he said. So I've come up with something new. So this is Bond timeline. Flames, explosion, fire. Bond timeline.
Very nice. I'm loving that.
I don't know about that last bit. Okay, so basically, this is just a very quick rundown of the timeline of Bond comics, just to give everyone a bit of an idea, okay?
Okay.
So I'm just going to read this off in order. So in 1957, the Daily Express, a newspaper owned by Lord Beaverbrook, approached Ian Fleming about adapting his James Bond stories as comic strips. Fleming was then reluctant because he felt the comic strips would lack the quality of his writing, potentially hurting his spy novel series while he was still writing. But ultimately, obviously, he eventually agreed. Starting in 1958 and continuing to 1983, James Bond, the fictional character created by Fleming, appeared in a comic strip, which the first now was Casino Royale, as obviously the first book, as well. The story was adapted by Anthony Hearn, who previously had serialised Diamonds Are Forever and From Russia With Love for the Daily Express. The illustrations were by John McCluskey, who we mentioned did that sort of illustration of Bond, with his partner Henry Gamage until 1966. Now, to aid the Daily Express in illustrating Bond, Fleming commissioned an artist to sketch whom he believed James Bond to look like. Now, there is a picture in the book of comparing the Bond that was commissioned by Fleming and McCluskey's Bond. Now, McCluskey's version of Bond is very Sean Connery-esque, perhaps even a little bit more rougher in a way, but very sort of Connery-esque along those lines. Whereas the Fleming commissioned Bond was very much sort of a bit pre-war, a bit Cary Grant, a bit sort of like that. So it definitely looked dated almost, and it didn't look quite as tough. So it's quite interesting to see what Fleming's version of Bond was, and it's definitely wouldn't be everyone's sort of image of Bond nowadays, sort of thing. So it basically was McCluskey felt it was too outdated and didn't feel right, so he did his own. Now, in 1966, Yaroslav Horak replaced McCluskey as the artist for the Daily Express and adapted 6 more Fleming Bond novels and short stories, as well as Kingsley Amos's Colonel Sung, with his partner Jim Lawrence. Following the success of Man with a Golden Gun, Horak and Lawrence subsequently went on to write and illustrate 20 original James Bond comic strips after being granted permission by Ian Fleming's trust. Now, in 1977, the Daily Express discontinued their series of Bond comic strips, although Horak and Lawrence went on to write and illustrate several other James Bond adventures for syndication abroad in Europe for the Sunday Express and the Daily Star. The Daily Star concluded Bond's UK newspaper run with Polestar, and by 1983, 52 adventures had been syndicated in British newspapers, 7 of which were initially published abroad, and an amazing 6,500 strips had been produced over the 25-year period. Now, that's a huge amount. 6,500. That's a lot.
That's a lot of bondage.
That is a lot of bondage. So, basically, since first publication, the comic strip have been reprinted several times. First by the James Bond 007 International Fan Club, interesting, in the early 80s, and then by Titan Books, actually printed them back in the late 80s. And then the ones I have now are the sort of reissues, which began in 2004, and all of them have little forwards by Bond film actors such as Caroline Munro, George Lazenby, Shirley Eaton, Eunice Gayson, Roger Moore, Maud Adams, Britt Eklund, and Richard Keel. So I think they're well worth getting your hands on these Titan ones because they are good. It's just it is a completely different area, but it's something that I'll have to investigate. So
very nice. Bond timeline indeed. That was some good stuff. And like I say, it's kind of a bit of a new world for us. So it's there's plenty to be discovered. It's very nice. So I think now is time for Bond trivia, isn't it? I got a bit too excited and too keen before, didn't I? I skipped a section like a muppet. Yeah. So your trivia questions for the day were.
Well, okay, so I'm going to go with the sort of fact sort of question. Okay, so what is borscht?
Is it a sausage?
It's not. Borscht is actually a soup.
Ah.
Now, when she says, "But he will be borscht," if he's sort of squashed, then he would turn into a soup of sorts. So I'll give you the little rundown. Sorry.
I always assumed she was saying boshed as if like BOSHED, like he will just be boshed.
Boshed, that's what I thought.
Okay,
as well.
Interesting, nice.
So borscht is a soup of Ukrainian origin, popular in many Eastern and Central European cuisines. The most common version of borscht uses beetroot or tomato as the main ingredient, along with potatoes, cabbage, onion, smetana, which apparently is a version of sour cream, salt, and in some variations, meat and fish are added too. Which got me thinking, because Matt Batten, one of our JBR listeners, he's very much, he was doing the culinary bonds with the films. I wonder if he made borscht when he watched Living Daylights.
It's a good point. We'll have to consult. Let us know on Facebook or Twitter, Matt, if you made borscht for Living Daylights.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So that was that one. Now the main sort of trivia question was, it's quite a hard one really. Who saved Bond's life in Geneva?
I think that was Who Saved Bond's Life in Geneva. So that's got to be Goldfinger, the film Goldfinger. Am I on the right track with that?
That's what I think a lot of people will be thinking, but it's actually not Goldfinger. Can you think of another Bond that he was in Geneva?
No. When does he go to Geneva?
Shall I give you a clue?
Yeah.
It was in the pre-titles of a film.
It was in the
Geneva,
pre-titles.
one of the pre-titles.
Oh, no.
Perhaps a Brosnan film.
Thank you for that. So, Geneva... Yeah, Brosnan film. I don't know. Where was he in Geneva?
Swiss banker.
Oh, what a dickhead, of course. I'm thinking that was Spain. Yeah, okay. All right. It would have been whoever shot... no, I'm lost, man. I've ruined it. Go on, give me the answer.
It's Renard. Because do you remember Bond, when he's trying to escape, he's got a red light on him, and he thinks he's about to be shot, and then the guy who's got the he's being held at gunpoint, and then the guy who's about to shoot him has a red light on him, and then suddenly he gets shot, and it's Renard that takes him out.
Gotcha. Okay.
So he can free Bond, sort of thing.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, cool stuff. My question of the day was, which James Bond film was the first to feature a fictional country? And you get a bonus point if you can name what that country is.
Right, okay. Fictional country. Now, I think the first Bond to name a fictional place, I think, was Dr. No with Crab Key. Because I don't think it's real. But Crab Key's obviously not a country. So, I know the one that I can think of, I don't know if there's one sooner than that, is San Monique in Live and Let Die. Now, I'm trying to think as if I know if there's another one between there, then and there. And I don't know if there is. I'm going to say Live and Let Die, San Monique.
And you'd be correct. Well done.
Phew.
There it is.
I wasn't sure if there was another one.
So there we have it. Yeah, San Monique, the first fictional country in a Bond film. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I thought that, I'm sure Renard says to him, I saved your life back in Geneva. But I thought it was Bilbao as well. Because he's in Bilbao in Spain, and then does he go to see the bank?
Because I have a vague memory that he does say that line about Geneva.
He definitely says a line about Geneva,
but it's
it's a Swiss banker. But I'm sure that scene is in Spain, isn't it?
It is. It's in Bilbao, isn't it?
Yeah, because he obviously the very first bit he's in Bilbao. You see the museum. He goes up to see him. Then he he's stuck in that room and he swings down on that thing.
That's one to send out to the listeners. Let's get the JBR army on that and see if we can get to the bottom of what that is.
I'm probably mistaken, so apologies for that. But I'm sure he says the line, "I saved your life in Geneva." But anyway, if it is, then that's obviously a Bond fault in a way.
Okay,
but
good stuff.
Yeah, so Bond.
Next up, we have a listener trivia email.
We don't get these often.
We don't, do we? But we got a message from Julian Digby, who says, "Gents, I am one of the lucky ones that has been listening and watching you since February last year. I'm loving the way the podcast has evolved over the year and enjoy all the extra segments that have been added over the last 12 months, even including Chris's special jingles. I thoroughly enjoyed the trivia section in this podcast, number 31. The question was, which actress who was in You Only Live Twice was also in another Bond film? And the answer, of course, was Sai Chin, which we spoke about. Yep. As I'm also a fan of Star Wars, I must now do a voice of Yoda dying in his little hut. There is another, not Skywalker this time, but there is another actress who appeared in You Only Live Twice and another Bond film. I don't want to give you...
Was that your Yoda voice as well?
I didn't actually do it, did I? There's another. Is that good? Yoda
That's
voice?
Good. Yeah, I liked it. Yeah.
Yes. I don't want to give the answer away, but she was mentioned in what I consider to be your best podcast to date. Get your thinking caps on, gentlemen. Kindest regards, Julian Digby. So... I'm stumped on that one.
So he's saying there was an actress in You Only Live Twice that was in another Bond.
Yeah.
Lois Maxwell, she was in another one.
That's true. There's our answer, Julian. Hey, how about that?
Now, let me think about this. You only did it twice. Well, how about if it's a trick one? Nikki Van Der Zyl provided the voice of Kissy Suzuki and loads of others, but I don't think that would be it.
That's true.
Oh, his masseuse. What's her name? Wait a minute. What's his name? I know that the one that's massaging him before Aki comes back in. She is in the spoof of Casino Royale, but we haven't reviewed that, so it can't be her either.
Yeah.
Oh, I know who it might be.
Go on.
One of the massage girls is also Mai Lee from Goldfinger. Pussy Galore's pilot assistant.
Okay.
The one that spies through the hole. I think she's one of the bath girls. The one that's giving him a civilized bath.
Okay, interesting.
That's the only one that I could possibly think of.
Okay, Julian. Well, there's plenty of possibilities there. So if you could email back and let us know, or leave us a voicemail, preferably with the answer, that would be good, and we'll play that on the next episode.
Yeah,
but,
if not, then I'm stumped.
But good question, good stuff. So what's next then, Chris?
So the next is Bond. James Bond.
Very nice.
I actually picture myself as James Bond every time that I do that. You know that, don't you?
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I spend most of my life pretending I'm James Bond, so that's not news to me at all.
No, that's good.
Okay, so it was my quote last time, wasn't it?
It was your quote, indeed,
so I'm going to perform it for you again, and it was a difficult one, not for who it was, because that's blatantly obvious, but for where it is and when it happens. Is there anything I can do to warm you up? I'm going to do it one more time. Is there anything I can do to warm you up?
That's so good. Do you know what's funny is that if you were a Bond, I don't know who you'd be closest to, but the two that I'd put you closest to are Roger and Pierce. I think you'd be one of those two.
Yeah,
because you can pull off Roger and Pierce so well.
Well, thank you. I think I'm the same, and I'll tell you why. Because like somebody like you, you're very into your snowboarding and you're jumping off high obstacles and all that kind of stuff. Like you'd be a much more physical Bond, whereas for me, I'd be more of the ladies' man type Bond. I'd have my stuntman do all that shit. I don't want to be jumping off anything high and hurting myself. So I would definitely be from that school of bondage. I would I'd get a stuntman to do all the running around and all that kind of stuff. So I think you're probably quite right. So go on then. Who do you think that is?
So straight away I knew it was a Roger, but it did take me a little while to think about it, because obviously, do you want me to warm me up? Straight away you're thinking they're somewhere cold. Could they be somewhere where it's snowing or whatever? But I did remember a line where I thought it was, and that was he in The Spy Who Loved Me when he said it to Anya when they're on the boat on the Nile.
Well, Chris, you've got it absolutely right. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
There it is. Yeah.
That took me a while to
it's a tough one, because you don't think immediately your brain would go to A View to a Kill opening sequence or something like that.
Something like
For Your Eyes Only, because there's so much snow.
And
all that kind of stuff. You don't think Egypt is a cold place. So I thought that would be a spanner in the works of a lot of people. Well done. I'm impressed you got that.
Oh, thank you very much. Now this one is going to be interesting.
I'm excited.
Oh man, I don't know if I could do it. Right, I might have to say it a couple of times myself just to get it going. I might even have to read it. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Okay, you ready? So this is my quote for podcast 33. You ready?
Yeah.
Chassa si o shao selmes le shime song.
Do you know what? That is absolutely fucking crazy, but I got that in one go. That was amazing. Yeah, I know exactly who that is. Yeah. That was amazing. Let's hear it again, please.
I don't know if I can do it again. Oh my god, right. Give me a second. It's so hard to do. Okay. Chassa si o shao selmes le shime song.
Yeah, I've got that. I know exactly who that is. Yeah, I know exactly
brilliant.
who that is. Great stuff.
I don't think the pronunciation's quite on key, but there we go.
No, I think it was great. So yeah, we'll obviously reveal the answer to that guest quote in our next episode. But I'll be interested to see who else got that, because that's funny. That's hilarious. Good stuff. Excellent work.
Okay.
Okay, good stuff. So we have the answer to our last guest listener question from Dan Gale last time. So let's play what his quote was. Okay, so any ideas on that one, Chris? I know we had differences of opinion on this one.
Yeah, well, there were two things that kind of caught me straight away from the sound of the coughing. Someone came to mind straight away. And that's kind of who I wanted to go with. And then you said who you thought it was, and that was a really good guess as well, because it was very similar to the sound that the guy makes. But he did name the character, so I didn't know. Perhaps the person that you had in mind had a bit of a more well-known name, so I thought, maybe it's that. But I wanted to go with my first instinct.
So who was your first instinct?
Do we need to know the answer first, or do we say it?
We can say it first.
We can say it. Okay, so straight away, I thought it was the old man in Venice in Moonraker, where he's walking across the humpback bridge. He's having a little cigarette, and he's and then he sees the coffin floating along underneath the bridge. It was just after Bond there's a coffin boat that goes past Bond, and then a guy comes out of the coffin and chucks a knife. Bond gets a knife and chucks it back at him, and the coffin drops, and then it hits a bridge and it falls down, and then this old guy sees his coffin floating past and he's
okay, interesting. So my guess was Valentin Zukovsky falling into the caviar in The World Is Not Enough, because I imagine you'd do a fair amount of coughing and sputtering after that.
He did.
So let's hear Dan's answer, and then we'll see which one of us were right.
Hello, Tom. Hello, Chris. This is Dan Gale reporting back with the answer to my Guess the Quote question from last time. The quote was... And it was, of course, the Venetian trampy hobo fellow that chucks his fag at a coffin in Moonraker. Yay! Well done if you got it. And if you didn't, good on you. That means you're not as much of a nerd as you thought you were. That's great. You can relax. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I have to get this. Hello? Yes, Prime Minister. At once, Prime Minister. I'll get my best man on it straight away. Oh, I didn't say goodbye. Damn. I always hang up and I never say goodbye. Hang on. Miss Moneypenny, would you remind me later on to phone the Prime Minister and say I'm sorry that I didn't say goodbye to him properly when I hung up on him earlier?
It is later on, Philippi Minister, and say I'm sorry I didn't say goodbye to him properly when I hung up on him earlier.
I didn't say that at all. Moneypenny, have you got cloth in your ears?
No need to apologise.
Look, I think you spent too much of your time this morning flirting with agents and not doing your job.
Everything you need to know about Apple products is on Apple's website.
Why shouldn't I fire you?
After all I've done for you.
I think you should just clear out your desk now, okay? And then shut the door on the way out.
I'm still here for you. My apologies.
You just can't get the staff. Bye.
So first of all, we've got to say, what an amazing message. I'm loving the sound effects.
So good. The sound effects and the fact that this guy clearly works for MI6, but yet he's still putting time for James Bond Radio, which is amazing.
I think we may have found another mole in MI6, because I don't know many spies who phone up podcasts and leave messages and broadcast their conversations with the Prime Minister. But excellent work, Dan. That was good stuff. And you were, of course, right, Chris. So well done.
Well, thank you. Well, I mean, that's all the thanks go to the brilliant quote, really. It's great. Very portrayed exceptionally well.
Absolutely. So it's time to move on to Guess the Music Cue.
Yeah.
So what did we have last time?
Okay, so last time it was actually, it was a very, all of these pieces of music, I know they're quite short. Now this one, I remember you mentioning that straight away you kind of knew what film it was from, because it is quite an individual type soundtrack for this film.
Yeah.
And it could allude to any particular part in the film, so it's not an easy one. But yeah, should we have a listen to it and then...
Let's have a listen to it. Okay, so immediately I know that's Thunderball.
Indeed, excellent stuff.
I am going to say I imagine that is at some point during the Vulcan being crashed sequence, I would think.
You see, right on, spot on. It's
Nice.
the part where Angelo puts the sort of dodgy, whether it's cyanide gas or whatever, basically he wrecks the air supply for everyone else so they die. And it's just a point where they're all coughing and then... But yeah, no, great. Got it. Spot on. Good
Very
one.
nice.
Nice
Cool.
one.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so we have a new guest music cue for this week. Now with this one, this is a scene that I know everyone loves. So I think it might not be super difficult to get, but it's a really nice little bit of music. So,
all right, cool.
Okay, so here's the music cue for this week's podcast.
I think I've got it this week.
You've got it, yeah.
I think I've got it this week.
It's a cool scene, that, and I just love that bit of music as well. It goes with it so well. So
I love that too. It's one of my most exciting bits.
I almost want to say what it is, but we're not.
Yeah, so do I. I'm trying to stop myself. So there we go.
Okay, so what's next?
So that's guess the music cue out of the way. Next up, we have the complete the lyrics section. So.
Dun, dun, dun.
Was that a new jingle you just made up on the spot? Dun,
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was. Now, I know you knew what this was straight away. So I'm going to sing it this time because I deadpanned it last time. So I'm going to sing it completely purposefully out of tune. Okay. So I'm doing this purposefully out of tune.
All right.
So it might make it harder. Okay.
Okay.
Hold one up and then caress it.
All right. I don't think I win any prizes for getting this one because it's pretty straightforward.
No, go for it.
I would say it's Diamonds Are Forever.
It is indeed, but that's not how we play this game.
Oh, of course. I keep forgetting we play it differently.
Yeah, you've got to complete the lyrics. So I'll do it deadpan.
Okay.
Hold one up and then caress it. Go.
Touch it, stroke it, and undress it.
Yeah. Lovely job.
Very
Great
nice.
stuff.
Good
Indeed.
stuff.
Real.
Okay.
Have you got one for me this week?
I do.
Okay.
And I think this is going to get you. So we need you to complete the lyric for this.
Okay.
We know when to kiss and we know when to kill.
Now, I've got a strong feeling of what film it's from, what song it is.
Okay.
But that's not the hard bit. That's the easy part.
Yeah.
The hard bit is... So, yeah, I'm going to have to definitely have a good think about that.
Ah,
I know
good
the
stuff.
song... Oh, that's a bit like... It's one of those things, where it's there in the brain somewhere. You just got to find where it is.
There it is.
Which
Absolutely.
I haven't found at the moment. But good one.
So that completes our the games round of James Bond Radio, episode number 33,
Indeed.
with the guess the quotes, the guess the music cues, and the complete the lyrics section. Triple threat.
boom.
So there we have it. That pretty much wraps up today's episode, doesn't it? It's been a good one. I've enjoyed myself.
It's been good, and I think we've gone through a lot as well. I mean, there's been lots of stuff to talk about. I just don't see that dying now. Between now and when Spectre's released, I think we've got a lot to talk about. Lots of involvement. Keep the quotes sending in from the listeners and stuff, and it's all good. It's good, great interview. Really, again, another nice chat. I mean, when are we going to find someone who's not nice? Are we ever going to interview someone and think, oh, hang on a minute, they were a bit of a... But I think we haven't found one yet.
We haven't. Yeah, let's keep going until we do, until we find someone, and then we can talk about it. Be like, what a wanker they were, eh? But there we go. So we will reveal a little hint to what we're going to be talking about next Friday on the Facebook page. So make sure you come and like that. Check and get involved with the chit chats. That wraps up episode 33 of James Bond Radio. I've been Tom Sears.
Stuff. I've been Chris Wright.
And James Bond Radio will return with a mystery subject in 2 weeks' time. We'll see you then.
Great. See you then, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.